And we're live. This is Coffee Ride. I'm DJ Mars Miranda. Joining me tonight, of course, from Portugal, our only pro Pinoy cyclist in Europe, Paco Ochoa. And you have a very special guest tonight. I'm sure everyone's been looking for. Nasa tayo
Okay
dyan
naman
sa
po.
Laguna.
Ito, nasa probinsya po.
Ano to? So, kamusta naman, sir? How's everything? Kamusta ang schedule natin? Mukhang every time I see you, puno, puno. Ang dami may bike eh. Di ba? Ang
Ano
dami
po,
bagong bike.
actually, I didn't expect it na maging gano'n. Ngayon, yung booking po natin, the earliest available slots that we have are for August and September na po.
Wow!
From January up to July. Honestly, nung tumama yung COVID, natakot ako kasi we're usually 5-6 months fully booked. Then, bumaba ng 2 months. So, siguro sabi ko natakot lumabas yung tao. Then, eventually, nag-pick up yung booking po. Which is, sobrang thankful naman po tayo. Yun nga lang, medyo lagari talaga, nakakapagod po.
Oh, pero grabe kasi ang daming bumili ng bike eh. Ang daming either nag-upgrade, nag-first bike, nag-explore ng ibang format like roadie na nag-gravel, naka-mountain bike na nag-road or whatever permutation, di ba? Dami.
Yes. Usually, if I base it dun sa mga bikes na I get to work on, maraming nag-shift to road bike and gravel riding this pandemic po.
From mountain bike.
From triathlon
From
bike.
try pa. O nga pala,
From
triathlon pa
mountain
pala.
bikes medyo nag-pick up pero it's road biking na medyo dumadami yung nagpapa-fit. Siguro off-season kasi ng triathlon.
Oo.
They want to try something more agile, something more they could do social riding with. Kaya madami po talaga. And then, sabi ko nga, if when people ask me, sabi ko, if there's one thing na COVID magandang nagawa yung COVID for cycling, it saved the industry talaga.
Oo. Tsaka nag-boom pa lalo.
Nag-boom pa. Kasi if I'm basing it dun sa mga nakikita ko 2-3 years ago, medyo may nakikita kaming decline sa market. Kasi madaming lumalabas na iba't ibang activities like may mga Spartan, may mga CrossFit. So yung tao iba't iba yung naging options nila. Pero nung nagka-COVID, they can't do basketball, yung iba
Walang gym.
healthier lifestyle. So they get to try cycling. The good thing is, nung sumubok sila ng cycling, nakita nila na masaya pala yung cycling.
Oo.
It's not just for fun, but at the same time, it gets to help them be more healthier and fitter. So, madaming nagagawang magandang bagay para sa katawan ng tao.
Ayan. So when we posted the poster like yesterday, para we told the viewers or anyone who's interested, get your questions ready and, diba, we were talking about it earlier. We'll try to Sir Martin will try to answer all your questions and, diba, parang at least you get an idea of how bike fitting works, what might work for you, what might address the problems that you're having with your bikes. Sasagutin natin yan mamaya. Pero eto lang, Boss Martin, curious ako. Bakit bike fitting? Alam mo yun, yung parang paano mo naman napasok yung bike fitting? Siyempre, di ba?
Honestly, nakakatawa yung story yan. Kasi nung time na sabihin na nating adik na adik ako sa triathlon, sabi ng dad ko, ano plano mong gawin sa buhay? So, without me knowing na
familiar yun, ha?
Yun na ba plano mong gawin sa buong buhay mo? So sabi ko, hindi po. Sabi niya, mag-isip ka ng bagay na magagawa mo na nasa interest mo pa rin. So, naghahanap ako. Sabi ko, I don't want to put up a bike shop kasi may mga friends ako may bike shop. And then nakikita ko, masakit sa ulo magtayo ng isang bike shop. And then, sabi ko, ano pa bang service? Pero honestly, nung sinabi kong bike fitting, pinagtawanan ako ng nanay at tatay ko. Sabi niya, ano yan? Then, pinakitaan nila ako, may mga forms na pala sila nakahanda. They wanted me to study sa Clark, pinagpipiloto nila ako.
Wow.
Sabi ko, that's the last thing na gagawin ko. Sabi ko, kung pwede nga lang sumakay ng aeroplano laging lasing, sasakay aeroplano kasi mas gugusto ko pag sumakay ng barko kaysa mag-aeroplano. At least yung chances ko pag nasa barko ko, mas mataas-taas pa kung meron mangyari. Then, I told my dad, just trust me in this. Kasi at that time, nagtatrabaho pa rin ako sa kanya sa business ng dad ko. Sabi niya, sige, bahala ka. Pagbibigyan kita, tulungan kita, I'm going to help you, mag-aral ka. So, pinag-aral niya ako. Sabi ko, I'm gonna start doing this parang hobby lang muna, Saturday, Sunday. So, it started Saturday, Sundays, then eventually, and then nag-start ako, sobrang late lang yung studio ko. Sabi ko noon, I don't wanna go to Manila. May mga friends ako nag-fit sa Manila. Then eventually, lumaki na lumaki without me hindi ko na malayan yung pala, ang dami ko ng partner sa Manila. I started fitting na sa Manila. Then, tanda ko dati, I was fully booked for 1 week, tuwan-tuwa na ako. Then 1 week started, naging 1 month, 2 months. Then, hanggang ngayon, ito na po yung naging profession ko. Kumbaga, nagtuloy-tuloy na.
Speaking of which, congratulations yung bagong shop mo sa May Makati. Ganda. Promote natin. So, you can find him, you can visit him or find him at La Course Velo sa may Sampaloc Street in Makati. Tama ba? Tama, diba?
Yes.
Sampaloc
It's
Street.
in San Antonio Village po, 886. So, nag-expand po kami ni Boss JP. The old La Course Velo will be solely a fitting studio na. And then the part na before was pinalaki na po namin yung shop. So doon na yung magiging mechanic area, tsaka doon na rin yung magiging showroom po.
Showroom. So yes. Nakapunta na kayo ng Le Course Velo, kinuha na nila yung bentahan ng damit sa tabi. Wala nang bumibili ng damit eh. Bike na lang binibili nila.
Po ng pandemic, yung fashion industry medyo.
Oo, kasi sa bahay na lang sila lahat eh.
Malungkot din kami kasi yung katabi po, isa cyclist din, triathlete din siya.
Nako, ayan, no? Sabi ni Cap Vince Corpus, nako, lots of temptation sa La Course Velo.
Mahirap pumasok. Hindi ka makakalabas nang wala kang bitbit. Huwag kayong magtatanong lalo na kay Jeff. Dahil kahit ako, pag nagtatanong ko, napapabili talaga ako.
Eto, hi lang tayo sa mga nanonood. Fides, Anthony, Earl, Franklin Bongers, have fun, Sir Fred. Have fun, Frederick Martin Ilagan. Ito, real talk. Anong gusto mo gawin sa buhay mo? Last week, sino ka ba? Sino ka? Ngayon, anong gusto mo gawin sa buhay mo? Rogels, good evening, guys. So, ito. So, napasok mo yung bike fitting. So, naging from your weekends only na lumaki ng lumaki. So, what's the process of certification naman? So, now, you're certified with the Steve Hogg fitting diba? So paano ba yan? How does it work? Paano lang brief background lang. Paano ba yung certification na yan?
There's a lot of schools offering different educations, they have different protocols, they have different certifications. Honestly, I started retool. Akala ko pagkatapos ko mag-aral ng retool, alam ko na lahat. Kumbaga akala ko, ito lang yan, para lang ako nag-a-align ng gulong ng kotse, I just have to follow the machine. Kailangan green lahat. Then nung nag-fit na ako, parang, teka, bakit may mali? Parang tama yung sinasabi, yung machine, it's doing, sabi nga sa akin, ito yung gawin ko, pero yung result, hindi komportable yung client ko. So doon na dumating yung mga questions until nagtanong-tanong ako doon sa mga naging classmates ko, naging professors ko, sabi nila, you have to study different other protocols kasi every time you fit, there's a different challenge and every client will give you a different problem. So for you to be able to solve those problems or answer those problems, you have to continue studying. So doon na po nag-start, I did retool and did different other schools. And then I got into IBFI, International Bike Fitting Institute, kung saan sila yung mag-a-assist sa'yo kung ano yung, they will assess your knowledge level, they will assess yung certification mo, and they will recommend kung ano pa yung mga pwede mong gawin to improve your craft. So they really helped me a lot na ma-improve ko pa yung nalalaman ko, maiangat ko pa yung knowledge ko para mas mapaganda ko yung services ko. So IBFI has 4 different service levels. It's level 1, 2, and 3, and level 4. So we started with level 1. Right now, we're at level 4 na. We're at the highest level of IBFI. Pero I'm not saying na even if I'm in the highest level of IBFI, alam ko na lahat, no. ako alam ko sa sarili ko na I still have a lot of things to learn and I'm still willing to learn. Kasi even up to now, I still have a lot of questions when I'm working with a client. Minsan, meron mga nabablanko pa ako na parang, anong dapat kong gawin dito? I'm sure si Boss Mars, alam niya, minsan, ito rin yung trial and error process natin. So, the reason why I want to keep on learning is to lessen the time na we spend by trial and error para pag nakita natin yung may problema yung client, at thereon, medyo alam na natin, may idea na tayo on how to solve those problems.
Ayun. Ito magandang question ni Vince. How do you balance or choose the right protocol for your fitting? So, syempre, meron kang iba-ibang, di ba, schools of fitting So, paano ba yan? Do you stick to one? Pino-combine mo ba siya based on kung sinong
If
finifit
you go
mo?
to different schools, they all have one goal. It's to make the client comfortable and efficient on the bike. And as you attend different schools, minsan sasabihin mo sa sarili mo, I know this already. Pero hindi mo pwedeng sabihin na alam mo na lahat kasi sa bawat school na pupuntahan mo, meron kang isang technique na mapupulot sa kanila na maisasama mo doon sa current na protocol na ginagawa mo hanggang ma-mix up mo na yung mas magandang mga protocols para mas may address mo na ayos para sa clients mo. Pero every client requires a different approach. Minsan, I use Steve Hogg, minsan I use torque cycling. Kasi minsan, ginamit ako ng Steve Hogg protocol, medyo hindi kami ganun ka-satisfy. I'm going to try a different protocol. And then minsan may mga clients naman na they go for fitting, not just to be comfortable, but to experience the fitting itself. Minsan naghahanap sila ng mga technology, mga motion capture systems. So, hindi naman natin pagdadamot sa kanila. We're going to use pressure mapping sensors. We're going to use mga LIOMO, mga force pods and stuff like that to let them feel the technology fitting. But we explain to them that it's not the technology that is deciding. We're just using tools to give us more idea on data kung paano pa natin mas mapapaganda yung position nila sa bisikleta. Or sometimes it's easier for me to understand. Let's say, for example, masakit, usually sa female, masakit dun sa private area nila. So, for me to better understand kung saan yung area, kakabitan ko po ng pressure mapping sensor. Pag kinabitan ko pressure mapping sensor, it's easier for me to talk to the female rider. Then mapapakita ko, is this where you're feeling the discomfort? So, mas madali namin masosolve yung problems. Or let's say, inertial measurement units or IMU, the LIOMO, minsan, pag kailangan ko turuan ng proper pedaling technique, minsan, di ba, pag may sumisipa na may lumalagutok, yung parang sinasabing kumakanto. May dead spot, di ba? So, minsan, ng pressure, ng force mapping sensors para makita namin kung nasaan yung dead spot. And then if I teach them to how to pedal properly, makikita nila na nalilinis yung dead spots. But the thing is, if I teach them how to pedal properly, hindi overnight magagawa nila. It will take months for them to train their biomechanics to adjust on the new pedaling technique.
Ayan. So basically, I guess, no, parang the more things you study, the more equipped you are, di ba? Parang hindi ka stuck, di ba? Parang hindi ka limited to just one school of thought, di ba? So, depends on how what you need to apply. Doon mo nalalaro na, okay, at least may knowledge ka of...
Sabi nga po ng mga professors namin, in bike fitting, the more you know, the more complicated it gets. Kasi unlike dati, ganito lang yan, kailangan ganito itsura mo, ganito angle. Pero the more you know about how the human body works, the more na mapapakamot ka sa ulo mo na parang, hindi pwede itong ginagawa ko, parang baka ma-injury yung client ko.
Yun. Ito na, ang dami ng mga tanong. So actually, Boss Martin, wala naman kami masyadong pin-repair na questions na like the past episode kasi alam namin na dito manggagaling lahat. A lot of people have been asking us throughout the past episodes na, di ba, ano bang gagawin namin sa ganito? Ano bang ganito? Siyempre, hindi mo kami pwede sumagot. And guys, if we were talking before we started the show, so si Sir Martin, parang sa niya, take advantage of him na today, di ba? Because obviously not everyone can afford a proper bike fit. So now is your chance to ask him your question. So answer a few. Tingnan natin. Baka may ano. Ito muna. Shout out. Watching from Dubai. Shout out to my fellow riders sa Pajak, UAE, and also Life Spark Cycling Team UAE from Yan Borja. What's up, Dubai people? Mga Pinoy sa Dubai. Ito. Ano ba itong una? Earl Bautista. Advice po sa bike fitting ng MTB versus road bike. From MTB kasi planning to buy a road bike.
Okay, if you've been riding mountain bikes for a long time, the usual issue that we are having, kunwari mag-shift na road bike, is usually the reach ng handlebar. Kasi pag mountain bike, nasanay ka na yung reach mo, medyo malapit sa'yo. And yung stack height o yung handlebar, medyo mataas. So if you shift to a road bike, medyo feeling mo, hinahabol mo yung handlebar. So I always tell my clients na if you're coming from a mountain bike and shifting for a road bike, start with an endurance bike. A higher stack bike with a shorter reach para hindi ka masyadong manibago. Okay. And then, start with a comfortable position, medyo malapit do sa dating position mo sa mountain bike, then gradually adjust your position until ma-feel mo na you're more comfortable. Huwag mong bibiglayin na isla mo yung handlebar, habaan mo yung stem, it will come.
Aray.
Smart. Kay Boss Mars kasi ba ng 130 yan eh.
Tinumaka kami ni Paco eh.
Gradually adjust your bike hanggang, kasi every month magbaba ka ng 5mm, then every month you see if kung humahaba na yung reach mo, mag-adjust ka ng 1cm. Then eventually it will be comfortable for you na. It's the best thing to do para maiwasan po yung mga injuries and for you to be able to enjoy road cycling. Another usual problem na sinasabi na sa akin, pag lumilipat sila sa road bike, medyo nagugulpira yung katawan nila matagtag. But I always tell my clients, if you're coming from a mountain bike, it's best to invest in a wider tire, like maybe a 25 or a 28C, then medyo lambutan mo lang yung goma para may dampening pa din. Kasi hahanapin ng katawan mo yung dampening ng mountain bike kasi has a shocks, then he has a thicker tire dun sa bisikleta.
I think also isang consideration ni Sir Frederick sa pag-bike fit yung functionality nung riding na gagawin mo siguro. Tama ba, Sir Frederick? Kunwari,
yes po.
Yan, bibili ka ng road bike. Ano bang gusto mong gawin sa road bike? Kakarera ka ba ng...
Sino ka ba?
Sino ka ba, di ba? Ano bang gagawin mo?
Kakarera ka ba?
Sino ka ba at anong plano mo, di ba? So,
it all boils down to the goals of every rider. Kasi not everyone wants to race. May mga rider na the reason they're riding is just for fitness. Meron iba na they just want to have fun. It's more of a hobby for them. So, kailangan itatama mo kung ano yung target mo, kung ano yung goal mo. Kung ang goal mo is to do endurance rides, don't look for something aggressive. Look for something comfortable. If your goal is to become a crit racer, then hanapin mo yung bisikletang nasa hinahanap. Like, it has to be stiff, it has to be agile, it has to be light for sprints. Iba't iba. Kaya the advantage nowadays compared before na nung steel bikes pa, it's one bike for everything. Nowadays, different brands like Specialized, they have different types of models of bikes. They made it para mag-match kung ano yung riding style and goals ng bawat rider.
Yes. Pero is SL7 one bike to rule them all. Plug ko lang. SL7. So sabi ko, pwede naman.
Pasok ka.
Pasok, di ba?
Honestly, tama po yun. Lalo na ngayon, yung nakikita ko with the disc brakes. Disc brakes are really, really good kasi it lets you adjust the width ng tire na sobrang pwede mong gawing for if you want something na for crit racing, pwede mong nipisan yung tire, or let's say you want to do ODAX, palit ka lang ng wider tire. So tama po, malaking bagay yung nagagawa compared pag naka standard calipers ka lang na you're limited, probably widest is 28C. Minsan nga 25C hindi na pumapasok pa.
Sige, eto. From Yan Borja. Meron bang unique bike fitting for Asian riders as compared to European riders?
Honestly, when I was starting fitting back in the day, sabi ko, the problem with Asians have short inseam and long torso. The usual Asian. Pero when I went to different countries to study, nakaka-encounter din kami ng mga Europeans, minsan sa Australia na same type of body rin. Same body proportions din, long inseam, short torso. But usually, if you look at Europeans, I'm sure si Sir Paco makakasabi niya, they have really long legs, short upper body, and long reach. Kaya when they ride the bike, parang ang pogi, ang tataas ng mga seat post, ang haba ng reach nila, which is minsan yun yung sobrang pilit kinokopya ng mga Filipinos or ng Asian riders, which is minsan hindi na tumatama sa physiological characteristics natin.
Ito, from JV Blumentritt. Hi Martin, Gavin is asking if he can eat chicken already. One of the best fit stories I've ever heard. Ano yan?
Yeah. Si Steve Hogg, he highly believed that the gut has the most active nerves in our body. And then sometimes we eat some stuff, like we eat too much chicken, we drink too much beer, we drink too much coffee. It has effects in our central nervous system. Nire-reject na ng katawan natin. And then pag nangyari yon, our central nervous system will go into a limp mode. So the usual thing na nangyayari, tumatabingi, nagtitilt yung hip natin, yung pelvic natin. So pag tumigbingi yung hip natin, it leads to muscular imbalances that leads to discrepancies. Umiiksi yung isang leg natin. Opo, kaya minsan may mga when we test yung sa umbilical nila, sa gut nila, minsan pag may sinabi na it rejects chicken, we tell the client na you try to stay away from chicken for 2 weeks just to let your body adopt on the new adjustments that we did. Parang sa akin, I've proven na hindi ako pwedeng sunod-sunod na kumain ng yogurt for 4 days.
Oh wow, may ganun pala.
When I was training with Steve, yogurt ako ng yogurt, then one time we were hiking up a hill, parang may sumipa sa likod ko. Sabi ko, what's that? Parang may spasm. And then we went home, chinek niya yung pelvic alignment ko, nag-shift ng 2 cm. So umiksi yung right leg ko. Sabi niya, I just aligned that 2 weeks ago. What have you been doing? I said, I was just eating yogurt. So sabi niya, try to stay away from yogurt and let's see. Then yun nga, I tried staying away from yogurt. Usually I eat yogurt once a week lang. Hindi na bumalik yung misalignment ng hip ko.
Oh wow.
Sabi ko nga, I didn't even bother asking it. Sabi ko, baka hindi turo sa akin ito pag tinanong ko siya na tinanong.
Galing. Eto, Ronald Tan, hey Martin, woohoo, happy with the fit. Ayan. Another satisfied customer. Pero solid naman kasi talaga eh. Ako kasi pang ilang fit ko na kay Sir Martin. Pag may bago akong bike, diretso agad kay Sir Martin. Kailangan pa-fit agad, pati shoes. Yun.
Although, honestly, hindi naman po ako perfect na fitter. I make mistakes pa rin. Kaya I love it when my clients give me feedbacks. Kasi those feedbacks will help me understand what's happening on their body para alam ko if I have to call them in, maybe possible readjustments until matama namin yung position. Kasi hindi naman po lahat ng fit na kukuha in one session lang. Minsan may mga tao na it will take 2 sessions, minsan take 4 sessions to finally perfect the fit po.
Tsaka hindi mo naman malalaman kung tama yung fit unless i-ride out mo ng matagal eh.
Totoo po.
Diba? Hindi naman lalabas yung mga sakit-sakit niyan pag diba?
I always tell my clients give their body 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
I always tell them first week they're going to hate me kasi the fit will feel worse. They will tell me, they will say na parang may maling ginawa sa akin si Sir Fred. Second week starts to feel better. Third week should feel good until the 4th week. But I always tell them that if you feel good in the 4th week, it doesn't mean that that's your perfect position now. You have to understand that the body changes. The more you ride your bike, the more you get fitter. Your core gets stronger. The more you get more flexible. So your body will be looking for a more aggressive position. And that's what we want to take advantage of para mas mapaganda natin yung position ng tao sa bisikleta po.
Ayan, Mabel, ito. From yung yung mention mo kanina, is there a difference between the bike fit for cyclists, pure cyclists versus a triathlete?
It depends. It depends on the type of triathlete. If it's a UCI triathlete and a cyclist, medyo may pagkaparehas. Pero if you're telling me that it's a pro triathlete riding, doing Ironmans, it's far different positioning po. Because in cycling, we want to make sure we get the rider efficient. We want to make sure it's like an orchestra that the cyclist is using all the muscle leg groups para mas efficient sila. Para hindi nabubugbog yung isang part ng muscle lang nila. Unlike in triathlon, we want to make sure na the rider gets to run fresh legs off the bike. So we want to be able to use the certain muscle groups lang that would let them put power on the bicycle. At the same time, let them run faster off the bicycle.
Yun. So ano talaga, yung purpose talaga ng fit mo yung importante. So dapat alam mo na kung ano yung purpose ng pinapa-fit mo bago ka pa lang pumunta.
Yes. Just like crit racers and road racers, they have different positioning. Usually I position my road racer 60-40, 60% of the weight still on the saddle and 40 on the cockpit. But if it's more of a crit racer that they're always standing up para maka-break away, I usually put them 50-50 para when they stand up, instantly yung power nasa pedal agad.
Ayan. Ano to? Ito, Enrique Valles na may bagong bike. How often should you refit?
It depends. I always tell my clients if there's a problem the soonest possible time. But if you don't have any problem on your fit, I always tell them to come to me every 4 to 6 months. Why? In 4 to 6 months, there are a lot of things that can happen. Either you improve your body, either you lose weight, you gain flexibility, gain mobility, or it could be the other way around na tumaba ka.
Aray! Grabe ka
kailangan i-adjust po natin. Normal lang po yan. Let's say for me, I used to weigh around 135, 140 pounds during when I was racing. Pero if I look at my fits back in the day and compare it right now, hindi ko na po kayang sakin yung mga bisikleta ko dati. Nowadays, I always ride with a 2 centimeter spacer sa bisikleta ko kasi medyo malaki na yung tiyan ko. So I always tell my clients, every time you lose 15 pounds or gain 15 pounds, you need to see me kasi there will be changes in your saddle height or even in the reach of the bars.
So 15 pounds, guys. Wag na kayo magpapayat o magpataba. Eto, ano to? Nico Garcia, kailan sked ko? Ayan. Dito na nagtanong. Eto, EJ Felipe. How do you pick the right saddle? Yun ang magandang tanong.
Good thing. Wait, I have sample saddles to show lang.
Ayan. Nag-prepare si Boss Martin today.
Kapag yan specialized yung saddle, alam na.
Nagkataon lang siguro.
Nagkataon lang ba?
Oo.
Parang nakakaramdam ako ng specialized na saddle.
Sorry, wala po specialized saddles ngayon. Saddle selection, it depends on the type of riding. Definitely, if you're riding a triathlon bike, you want to ride a triathlon saddle.
Wait, Boss Martin, baka pwede natin siyang i-zoom para makita yung mga saddle. Ma-close up.
This is Vesta. This is a CLSMP T5. I have a Dubai-Meissner Stride. And usually every triathlete favorite is an ISM Adamo. So, why do I always tell my clients, if you're riding a tri bike, it's always very good that you ride a triathlon saddle. Why? If you ride a tri bike and if you ride a road saddle, if you roll your hips forward like this, mangyayari, most of the time nagkakaroon ng pressure sa private area, sa genital parts. And if that happens, it will prevent you from going more aerodynamic. It will prevent you from rolling your hips forward. And if you don't get to roll your hips forward, hindi mo ma-activate yung glutes mo, which is the biggest muscle that we have on our legs, to give us more power. That's the thing that triathlon saddles are offering. So, may prong siya, if you roll forward, hindi tatama yung G-walls natin or yung private area ng rider sa harapan. So, mas makaka-roll forward siya, mas makakababa siya sa harapan. At the same time, mas open yung hip, mas may power, mas relax siya off the bike, mas makakatakbo ng ayos. At plus, mas makaka-power naman siya. Pero for road cycling naman, it differs din. Okay? For road cycling, I don't usually measure the sit bone. Why? We don't sit upright when we're on the bike. When we're riding the bike, we roll our hips forward. So you have to look for a saddle that will let you roll your hip forward, go down on the drops without feeling any ipit on your balls or your G-wells para mas makakagalaw ka freely. And then, sometimes, if you have wide hips, wide legs or makatabang legs, iwasan mo yung sobrang taba na saddle. Kasi ang mangyayari, pag sobrang taba ng front ng saddle, sasabit lang sa inner thigh mo. It will lead to chafing and will affect your pedaling motion. Usually, pag mga big thigh riders, I always tell them, get a narrow nose but a wider tail para mas stable sila sa bisikleta. At the same time, mas makakagalaw yung range of motion ng legs nila, mas maayos. Pero, yung pagpili ng saddle, for example, may nafe-feel kang pressure sa genitals mo. If the pressure is not that too much, go for saddle na may channel lang. I always tell my clients, don't always go for cutouts. Why? Pag cutouts, yes, it relieves the pressure sa genitals, pero it transfers the pressure in other areas. At the same time, yung cutout, pag wala ng space dito, it affects the stability of the rider on the bike. Stability is very important for us kasi doon nagmamatter yung efficiency natin tsaka pedaling power natin. That's why I always tell my clients, if you don't feel that much pressure, go for a channel. The channel not only relieves the pressure, but also make sure that you're more stable on the bicycle.
So, Boss Martin, channel is may ukit. May ukit pero hindi butas. Yan.
Pag hindi naman po ganun katindi yung pressure sa balls, go for a channel. It's always better than a cutout. Pero if you're having too much pressure on the balls, you can consider a cutout na po talaga. Then the shape, it comes with different shapes. If you have wide thighs, always go for a T shape. A T shape, narrow in the front, wide on the rear. But if you like sitting forward, if you like going to the drops, go for a V shape. Something like this. A V shape lets you sit in the front of the saddle pag magda-drops ka para mas nakaka-power ka, para even when you're on the drops, you're still stable on the bicycle.
Yan. So ito, from Norman, follow up. Sa fitting, does it have to be uncomfortable to be fast? Norman De Villa.
No, it doesn't have to.
Pwede bang most comfortable and fastest?
I always tell my clients that the priority in fitting is comfort. Why? We highly believe if a rider is comfortable on the bicycle, then it will be easier for the rider to build power on that position. At the same time, the most important thing is sustainability. Kasi power is nothing if you can't sustain it. Remember, if you're doing long rides, 100 kilometers, if you're doing road racing, it's 100 kilometers above. The most important thing is being efficient, being comfortable, and being able to sustain the position. It's useless if you're powerful in the first 20 kilometers, then if you can't sustain it anymore, magda-drop lang yung performance mo.
Yun. Ito nga sabi nga ni Ismael Magabo, forward motion performance. So far while riding a bike, I'm happy with my bike fit. Ayan. Sulit talaga eh. So, tsaka malaking bagay magpa-bike fit kasi nga comfortable ka eh.
Salamat
Ano
po.
pa ba to? Joseph David. Good evening, Sir Joseph. Thank you for tuning in. How to lessen yung numbness sa perineal area? Is it the saddle or the padding?
Honestly, most of the time, if you're feeling pressure in the perineal area, it's not a saddle issue. Most of the time, it's a positional issue. Check your saddle height. The saddle might be too high, or check your cockpit mo. The cockpit might be too low. Try lowering the saddle height. But the worst thing that you want to do is when you adjust your saddle height or your saddle, pag may nafe-feel kang pressure, mali na i-tilt down mo ng ganito ang saddle. If you tilt your saddle too far down like this, yes, nawawala nga yung pressure sa genitals mo, pero you're transferring all the weight on your hands. So, mangyari, mag-start ng numbness sa hands, strain sa forearm until umabot sa neck mo and sa lower back mo. It would lead to more problems. So, I always tell my clients, if you're adjusting your bike, start with level, get a flat pad, level the saddle, although it doesn't have to always be level. Sometimes I always tell my clients, you can tilt your saddle up to 2 degrees nose down. And then, pag na-level mo, try lowering the saddle. Most of the time, it's usually a saddle height. You don't always have to change the saddle. Most of the time, adjust lang ng saddle height. Minsan, adjust lang din po ng clit position. Kasi nangyayari, if you have your clits, I'm gonna get something.
Yan. Good evening, guys. Kamusta naman kayo dyan? Dami yung tanong, no? Dami yung biglang mga tanong. Sige lang. Tanong lang kayo dyan.
For example, if you have your clits too far high,
Ayan.
sobrang taas ng clit position mo, then you'll be forced to pedal point down, toe down like this. And if you're pedaling toe down like this, you'll be forced to increase your saddle height para lang magkaroon ng proper leg extension kasi sobra yung knee flexion. Knee flexion is pag nakabend yung knee. So para ma-feel mo na para nakaka-extend yung legs mo, you have to raise your saddle height. And that's where usually the saddle pressure starts. So I always tell my clients, what you want to do is try lowering your splits, sila mo pababa, and then pag binaba mo, try to lower your saddle height then. Not only it will be more powerful, at the same time, it will be more comfortable for your private area and your lower back.
Yan. Good evening, Boss Lito Vicencio. Hi, guys. Yo, Martin. How often should one revisit or go for a check-up for his fit? So, every 4 to 6 months, tama ba?
Yes, boss. Every 4 to 6 months.
Or every 15 kilos. 15 Every 4 to 6 months or every 15 kilos gained or lost, whichever comes first.
Or sometimes for competitive cyclists, I always tell them, we need to get, for example, for road racers, I always tell my clients, different races requires different fits. Let's say, for example, if you're racing Tour of Matobongkay, it's not that much climb, it will require a different fit. But if you're racing 3 stages of Tour of Pines or in Baguio, it will require a fit more focus in climbing. So nag-a-adjust din po kami doon.
Ayan, ano pa tong, teka, nawala ako. Someone asked, kailan ba dapat magpa-fit eh? Before buying a bike or after buying a bike? Nasaan na yung tanong na yun? Ang gandang tanong yan kasi marami ako nakita nagkamali eh. Ayan, Paulo De Leon. Should you get a bike fit before or after buying a bike?
The gold standard po talaga, if you ask us fitters, is fit before buying. Why?
Fit before buying. Ayan.
If you get fitted before buying, you can be assured that you're getting not just the correct brand, also the correct size, the specs of the bike, and the type of bike that will fit you. Yes. Kasi it's not all the time. Let's say, for example, with my belt, I wanted to buy an S-Works Venge. Pero hindi rin man kaya ng katawan ko. May hirapan lang ako. Yung pala dapat ang sinasakyan ko more of a Diverge or more of a Ruby para mas upright, mas comfortable, hindi po naiipit yung tiyan ko. It will help save you a lot of money. It will help save you a lot of time. It will eliminate trial and error. At makakasigurado tayo na mas comfortable kayo, mas tatama yung bisikleta para sa hinahanap ninyo.
Yeah. Ito lang guys, sorry, ako muna magtatanong. Has there ever been an instance or a situation where hopeless yung fit? As in, wala tayong sobrang either masyadong mali yung size ng bike, usually bike size di ba? Parang mali talaga eh. Do you ever tell them na just sell this bike and just buy a one that fits you better?
Happens a lot of times po. Like a few months ago, may client ako na female. She's around 5'2", I think 5'1". Went to me with a size small Canyon na road bike.
Parang medium yun eh.
Opo, sobrang haba. So sabi ko, I'm just gonna let you feel and let you understand that it's not gonna happen. So finit ko pa rin siya. Sabi ko sa kanya, this is the shortest stem that we have available. Sobrang further adjusted forward na yung saddle. It's not gonna work. So I told him what I can do is recommend the correct size of bike for you. Once you get the correct size of bike, come to me, then we will fit that bicycle for you. Opo. Or minsan naman, I have clients na sobrang liit po ng bisikleta. Nangyayari din. Pero the worst is clients who are biomechanically
challenge.
Challenge. Doon talaga minsan, tumatagal yung fits namin 12, 14 hours. And then it takes 4 sessions, 5 sessions.
Wow.
Hanggang may tama namin. I've sent a couple of clients to physiotherapists. Ayoko kasing sabihin sa kanila na cycling is not for you. I don't believe in that. Cycling is for everyone. You just have to have the correct approach and the right group of people to help you. May mga tao na hindi po kayang isolve basta-basta ng bike fitter na kailangan namin ng tulong ng mga physiotherapists, chiropractors, or cycling coaches to teach them how to pedal properly, to correct their body, and then it will be a teamwork now while they're working with a cycling coach, while they're working with a physiotherapist, they will come back to me para we adjust the position until we get them in the target position po.
Nice. Ito, from Dan Palses ba to? Bro, Frederick Martin, can I copy my Colnago bike fit to my SL7? So ano ba siya? Pag nagpa-bike fit ka ba ng different brands, does it just mean, kunyari, I guess ito yun bumili ka ng bike, tapos papa-adjust mo muna siya dun sa kung saan mo binili based on your previous fit. Does it apply?
The thing is, it depends on the geometry po.
Okay.
Kasi if we compare the Colnago C64 to an SL7, there will be some differences in the stack and reach. So definitely the stem length and even the saddle to cockpit drop will be different between the two bikes. So I always tell them, have the bike adjusted to the data that we have, then come to me, then we will fine-tune the bicycle. Let's say, parang ano lang po yan, sir. The SL6 that you have and the SL7, di ba? We went with a longer stem. Kasi if we look at it, sabi natin parang pareho lang. Pero when we fitted it, there's a big difference in terms of the stack.
Yes. And so I guess safe to say na when you first get your bike from the store, apply your previous fit, and then para pag dinala for fitting, konti na lang yung aayusin.
Yes, tama po. So it will be easier adjustments na po. Fine-tuning.
Para lang ma-ride mo muna siya ng first ride. Excited ka, syempre, di ba?
Yes.
So yun. Tapos ayan. Tsaka mo na dalhin na pag medyo may ano na. Nicole John Magno Viernes. How do you know if your reach from the handlebar is optimal?
Wait, good. That's a good question.
Ayan.
Gagaling mga ano. Good job, guys, ha? Ganda ng mga tanong niyo.
Sulit na sulit ang episode sa inyo, Kumain na ba kayo, guys?
Mamaya pala kami maniningil,
Handlebar po, okay? Ayan. So I always tell my clients, the default position should be like this. Sorry, kita niyo po ba? The default position should be like this. Para abot mo yung brakes, abot mo yung shifter. If you see yourself na naandito ka, it means your reach is too long. If you see yourself staying here, most of the time, it means the reach is too short. So default position is there. At the same time, it should be easier for you to go on the drops without any problem. Shift on the hoods, shift on the drops. Why? We want it here kasi if you're descending, easier to brake. If you need to shift, easier to shift. Pag nandito ka, ang mangyayari, pag pagod ka na, minsan hindi ka na makakalipat dito. Paglaspag ka na. Mas mahihirap. So, sa akin, it's okay to stay here when you're climbing. When you're on the rolling roads here, you can shift here. Pwede mo i-atras ng konti, pero not as much as like this. If you see yourself riding like this, you have a problem with your stem length or your bike size.
So eto, from EJ Felipe, are narrow handlebars better since we're on the topic of handlebars?
What's that?
From EJ Felipe, are narrow handlebars better?
It depends on the goals. Nowadays, there's this new thing going around pro cyclists na they want to go narrower, especially sprinters and track cyclists. Why? Kasi they become more aerodynamic. Kasi the wider you are, you're like a parachute. Lahat ng hangin napupunta. But if you prefer to do more climbings, sometimes a wider bar can help you get more leverage. But if you're more of a track racer, more of a crit racer, or more of a flat rider, it's always best to get the correct size of bars. Pero kunwari, if you're more full of velodrome, we're now testing narrower bars for cyclists.
Ayan. Vincent Corpus, what are your thoughts on oval rings?
Oval rings is not for everyone po.
Okay.
It helps, max of 15%. Although some people, they don't need oval rings. Usually, mountain bikers are the best pedaling, are the best in terms of pedaling motion. I find it to be the best kasi sobrang galing nila magbilog ng bisikleta. If you're a masher, I don't require I don't recommend an oval. If you're a spinner, it will help you be better kasi you're always on the power stroke.
Yeah.
So, mas makakatulong po. It's not gonna affect you, it's not gonna make you worse. Pero, it can help, pero iba't iba po in terms of performance gains. The max we've seen is 15% po.
Huwag ka na mag-oval rings, Vince Corpus, 15% pang ibibilis mo. Paano ka na namin nakabulin yan? So, Julian Paul Asineta, Sir Martin, normal ba when climbing ang naka-atras sa saddle?
It depends. There are people who loves to go forward para they can activate more of the quads and the glutes. There are people who likes to move backward kasi it means sometimes if you're moving backward, it means your saddle is a bit low. Kasi you need to move backward para ma-heel drop mo at the same time para maka-pull ka ng ayos para ma-activate mo yung hamstrings mo.
Ayan. From Kenneth Borromeo, I'm excited sa bike fitting sked ko with Frederick. Ayan. Sure marami kayong excited magpa-bike fit. Jonas Jean Aguilar, numbness on the fingers on a 1 to 2 hour ride sa road bike. Why kaya?
Fingers where po? Is it in the toes or in the hands?
Oo nga pala.
And the type of
Oo
bike.
nga naman. Pero si Boss Richie ganyan eh. Parang when he got his new bike, para same kami naka SL7 eh. So same din kami na we just tinransfer lang namin yung measurement from the SL6 to the SL7. Siya Venge. So Venge to SL7, ako SL6 to SL7. So nag-numbness din yung may numbness din siya sa kamay kasi nga iba yung haba ng geometry ng SL7 eh. So ano kaya yung cause nun? Is it
usually if you're having numbness in the hands, it means you have too much weight in the front of the bike. Opo. So it means you're leaning more on the handlebar. If you're leaning more on the handlebar, it restricts the blood flow. At the same time, it puts too much weight, which causes numbness on your fingers. Usually, it's the distal part of the hand. If you're having this, or sometimes it's the tilt of the handlebar, the way the shifters are adjusted. If it's too far up, like this, ang mangyayari, yung fingers mo here ang magna-numb. Kasi restricted yung flow niya. Pag sobra naman tilt down yung bars mo like this, yun naman distal part ng hands mo, yung magkakaroon ng problem kasi hindi nakaka-flow yung blood ng ayos doon. Sometimes it's the handlebar, but most of the time, it's the weight distribution of the rider on the bicycle, meaning they have too much weight in the front of the bicycle.
Yun. Albesa Kim, any thoughts po about MTB cleats on a road bike? Thank you.
Yes, I use it all the time po. Especially if I'm not sure about the terrain na pupuntahan ko, I prefer using an MTB cleat on my road bike para mas sigurado ako. For example, may mga parts pala na kailangan ko magtulak ng bike or kailangan ko maglakad. So, hindi masisira agad yung sapatos ko. For bike to work riders, for endurance riders, like Audax riders, I always tell them it's better to use a mountain bike cleat. Why? It's not just safer. At the same time, makakalakad kayo, mas tatagal yung pedal system ninyo and more comfortable po.
Joseph Tuason, do you also do bike fitting on a mountain bike?
Yes po.
Yes. Okay. So hindi lang siya pang road bike pan. So and is it any bike, gravel, road, mountain bike, tri-bike ang pwedeng i-bike fit?
Usually, I fit all types of bike except downhill bike and recumbent po. I haven't fitted a recumbent bike po. Yun yung nakahiga. Pero we fit road bike, gravel bike, tri-bike, time trial bike, track bike or a fixed gear bike, enduro bikes, mountain XC bikes, folding bikes po.
Pati folding bike pwede.
Opo.
Ayan. Try Pinas. Tumulin ako dahil kay Martin. Yung pala Hindi naman pala kailangan eh. Ito, Joaquin Tirona. Good evening. Need tips on how to set correct saddle height. Just basic settings that I can set on my own. So safe ba to say na yung kili-kili mo, ipatong mo sa upuan, tapos abutin mo hanggang dun sa gitna nung crank.
I have to admit, minsan pag nagmamadali ako, pag humihiram ako ng bike, I do it as a starting point. but it doesn't mean that it has to be your height. Usually I tell my clients the best thing to do is get your insim and then multiply it by 0.0887 or 0.0883. And that will be your starting point. Dapat yung legs mo hindi
Nagmath kami ni Pao. Teka, ano?
0.883.
7
7.
or
0.887. So inseam divided by 0.
Multiply.
That's
Multiply.
barefooted po barefooted, no cycling shoes, multiplied by 0.883 or 0.887. It will give you a starting point, but it doesn't mean yun na yung pinaka-saddle height mo. A saddle height has to be stable. A saddle height has to be assured na hindi naglalak yung knee mo when you're pedaling, hindi nagto-toe down yung foot mo. It means pag naglalak yung knee, nagto-toe down yung foot mo, masyado na pong mataas. Pag na-notice mo na yung heel mo masyado na nagda-drop, masyado na pong mababa ang saddle height.
Ayan.
I think
So
yan yung
again,
pinaka-common na
yung
makikita mong mistake, no? Yung mataas masyado yung saddle.
Pero
Actually,
I always tell my
basic
clients
na
na saddle height is dependent on the clit position.
Okay.
It's always the clit position. If you have
Pero
the right
for your basic first setting, at least make sure that your knees don't stretch too much or your heel doesn't
it
drop.
doesn't lock po and it doesn't stretch too much. If you look at the rider and if you see the posterior part of the knee or yung likod na knee na flicker na or parang gumagano na, it means the saddle is too high. Kailangan yung movement ng knee pag gumagalaw, relax lang siya. It means pag yung extension ng leg mo, yung movement ng knee mo pag gumaganto, it means you're using the glutes, the quads, and the hamstrings properly. But if, for example, ito yung likod ng tuhod mo, na-notice mo gumagano na, ibig sabihin nag-hyperextend na yung knee.
Pag pumipitik-pitik ka ng pag ganun, pag may stroke ka, yun,
pag may pitik na sa likod ng knee mo, mataas na.
Mataas na yan.
Arthro na yung ganun yan. Solution.
Sakit yan. Then, naka-ride na ako dati ng masyado mataas na saddle, masakit siya. Mararamdaman mo talaga siya na hindi talaga, may mali talaga. So from Alvin, from Ariel Folioso, maitanong ko po mga idol, bakit po laging sumasakit ang right side hip ko once climbing na or riding for more than 3 hours?
You could be rocking on the saddle, could be many possible factors, either saddle's too high or either you have a leg length discrepancy, so yung asymmetry mo after 3 hours lumalabas, which leads to imbalances on your muscle loading, kaya nagkakaroon ka po ng lower back pain.
Yun. Alvin Halos-Hos, Sir Paco, DJ Martin, Sir Frederick, good evening. My height is 5'5". Is there a difference when it comes to frame size of a bike, especially road bike, mountain bike, and fat bike?
If you're 5'5", it depends pa rin sa brand po. Okay. Like kanina, may nakita ko, may pinadala sa akin yung client yung bike ko. Sabi ko, bakit ang liit ng sizing nito? Hanggang 3XL meron sila. Imagine yung large nila, 52 lang ang top tube. So hindi natin i-base lang sa small, medium, large, and XL. It's always the stack and reach. It's always the numbers that we really have to look for. But usually if you're 5'5", it's more of a 48 or max of 50. You don't want to go beyond that. You don't want to go... Sometimes if you're more racy, you could go 46. It will still work. But if you go beyond 50, it will be too long for you. So if you're going to base it in a parang t-shirt sizing, XS. Pero like what I said, hindi na natin pwedeng i-base niya sa small, medium, large. Kasi may mga nakikita po ako, like kanina, I think it's, ano bang brand to? Elves na brand na bike.
Okay.
So,
kaya pala maliliit si Elves.
Kasi maliit.
The sizing goes up to 3XL. And yung large nila is parang 52 si tube, 53 top tube. So if you compare it sa ibang sizing, small, ano lang siya, small lang dapat po siya. Kaya ayaw natin magsabi na small ka, XS ka, gano'n ka.
Yung 3XL na yun, kay Will Ferrell na yun.
Yung 3XL nila, maliit pa rin po ang sizing.
Pero yun na nga, check nyo rin, especially if you're ordering like a frame online, check nyo yung geometry chart kasi naka-indicate naman dun na small, medium, large nga siya, but it gives you the measurement of the top tube, the seat tube, para at least makita nyo na is it the same sizing as the bikes that you previously owned or iba ba yung sizing niya, 'di ba?
One tip that I could give po, let's say for example, you have a current bike that fits you very well. Get the geometry, go to geometrygeeks.com. It helps.
Geometrygeeks.com.
Sobrang laking tulong po siya. From there, hanapin mo yung current bike mo, then hanapin mo yung mga bikes na gusto mong bilhin. You can compare the stock and reach and the data of the bicycle para makikita mo how the bike that you're looking at will fit you compared to your current bike.
Kasi yung Geometry Geeks, ano yan eh. So, i-input mo yung current bike mo, tapos kunyari nagsha-shopping ka. Input mo lahat ng options mo for your next bikes. Tapos lalabas siya na side-by-side comparison ng, kunyari, bike A, ang C-tube, ang top tube niya is, sabi mo, 523. Yung next, dikit-dikit yan. So, na-compare mo ngayon yung mga differences ng mga bike na chine-check mo. So, at least may reference.
There are two size. Yung isa is bike insights, but it's more technical. I still prefer, if you're not really looking at geometries, yung Geometry Geeks,
Geometry Geeks.
Madaling intindihin po.
Yes, ginagamit ko rin yun. Rogels, Sotels, Nogs. Dami siya.
Tulog na yan, tulog na yan. Puro
parang
C.
kante. Ano to? In buying a bike, paano kung ang height mo ay pasok sa small frame at medium frame? Which would you choose? Small or medium? Yan, frequent.
It will really depend on your riding goals. If you prefer to ride more of endurance, I prefer the medium. But if you prefer to be more competitive, more of the spirited riding, I prefer the small. Opo, pero it's not always like that. Kasi tulad po ako, I am almost 5'8", pero I have a very long torso and a short inseam, kaya pumapasok ako most of the time sa medium. Kasi if I go for a small bike, maiksi na yung reach masyado para sa akin.
Okay.
Opo. So, nangyayari lang sa bike ko, tama ang reach pero mababa ang saddle height ko po. So, kaya minsan, it's important that we look at the body proportions of the rider. There will be riders na would require a longer reach kasi masyadong mahaba yung upper body nila na pag nilagay natin sila sa small na bike, atrasado masyado yung saddle nila. Kumbaga, ito yung clamp, seat post, nandito na yung clamp nila kasi maiksi yung bike para sa katawan nila. So, we would rather see them in a bigger bike para mas nakasentro yung rail nila sa bisikleta ng saddle po. So, mas tama yung sukat ng bisikleta ng top tube para sa haba ng katawan nila.
Ito, from Ma'am Kyla Hortalesa, what are the best saddles for women? Any recommended brands?
For saddles, based on my experience, it's Mimic, S-Works Mimic.
Yes, special.
The second is Celes MP Well. It's a very good saddle.
Cele MP Well.
Yes, ho. Then the other is Jubayamais area for women. Pero for triathlon, usually it's either a Cobb or ISM Adamo. Minsan, power ginagamit namin. Pero what do you call this? The Trivent, the triathlon saddle ng S-Works, medyo hirap kami pagdating sa female.
Power saddle.
The power works for female po. Pero yung triathlon version nila, medyo malapad para sa inner thigh ng mga babae.
Pero yung Mimic talaga, I know some men who use the Mimic saddle din eh. Not special.
Even male po, I recommend them talaga. Pag may mga problems talaga, it works for them po.
Ayan. Regarding saddles, from Ralph Sakdalan, regarding saddles, let's say na good fit yung new saddle for you, will you still be experiencing pain since new siya? So, may break-in period ba ang saddle?
There are some saddles that requires break-in period. Usually, let's say for example, if you're a new user of ISM Adamo, medyo masakit siya sa una. And then there are some saddles na pag upo mo, parang it feels heavy na talaga. The best thing to do talaga is test the saddle out on the road, ride it for 100 kilometers. Then that's the only way you can tell if you're comfortable with the saddle or not. That's why I always recommend testing the saddle.
Yan.
Kaya po meron tayong mga test saddle programs para sigurado, para hindi nagkakamali ng bili.
Tsaka hindi ka bili ng bili, no? Pag sa saddle.
Opo.
So yan, pro tip, If you're looking for a saddle, look for a place like a shop that will lend you a test saddle para matest nyo siya bago nyo bilhin. Kasi kesa bili kayo ng bili and you end up with like 4, 5, 6 saddles at home na hindi pala okay sa inyo. Magastos din siya, di ba?
That's
So,
why yung shops, I'm very thankful for the shops who offers test saddle program kasi
Yeah.
malaking tulong po siya para sa mga riders.
So yun. So test saddle before, look for a place that offers test saddles. Next. Enteng Jimenez, how many years or kilometers before we change the saddle to a new one?
It depends. That's a very good question. If you see your saddle, let's say for example, you have a saddle and then if suddenly nakaka-feel ka ng lower back pain, pressure sa genitals, and then wala ka naman in-adjust sa bike mo, check your saddle. I always check the saddle like this. Okay? Pag nakita mo yung put a measuring device or a level, pag nakita mo tabingin na, it means the saddle is misaligned already. Either it's misaligned from the clamping or most of the time, yung shell niya tabingin na. Pag tabingin na yung shell niya, it's time to change the saddle. This is very common for Adamos. Usually the problem with Adamos, tumatabingi.
Kasi magkahiwalay.
This is one of my favorite saddles. Pero nangyayari, after a few years, tumatabingi na yung isang prong. Pag bumagsak yung isang prong, it would not only lead to lower back pain, pressure in the genitals, but could also lead to pedaling imbalances.
Yes.
Kasi tatabingi yung position mo. So power production mo, efficiency mo on the bike will be affected. There are different lifespans of saddles. There are saddles that would last 2 years, depending on the mileage, but there are saddles that would last longer. Yung mga Brooks saddles, yung mga Celia Anatomica, those saddles could last 1,000 kilometers. Pero may mga saddles naman which are made for competition that would require changing every 2 to 3 years po.
Pag tabingi, pag yung adamo niya tabingi na, palitan niya, pag naipit yung itlog niyo niyan, yari kayo dyan.
Then, minsan, may mga saddles, pag sobrang cushion na, ang nangyayari, pag doon ka lagi nakaupo, like this, kita mo, lubog na siya. Pag doon ka lagi sa area nakaupo, lumulubog na yung area. So, ano nangyayari? Yung cushion niya, lumilipat sa ibang area. So, pag lumipat sa ibang area yung cushion, it puts pressure na sa private area po.
Yes.
Matulis ang puwet.
Protect your balls at all times. Ito, Vince Corpus, there's a veteran technique taught to me on the saddle. I shouldn't see the hub. It's covered by the handlebar. Any comment?
It works, but not most of the time po. Like what I said, we differ on mobility, we differ in flexibility, we have different issues in our body. So may mga tao na pag hinabol nila yan, masyado na nag-stretch out yung likod nila. Or minsan, may mga tao na pag hinabol nila, naiipit na yung tiyan nila. So it's a very good starting point, but it doesn't mean it's the optimal position. Pero gumagana din po siya.
Ayan, Gian Alcantara, how about the flared drop bars for gravel bikes? How to properly position the STI? Questions from San Pablo, Laguna. Kabayan.
For gravel riding, I always tell my clients, kasi I've encountered lots of clients getting the really wide bars, really wide flares. What type of riding do you do? If you see yourself more riding on the trail, a flared bar will help. It will make you more stable. But if you have a gravel bike and you use it mostly on tarmac or in the roads, it's okay to get a non-wide bar. Okay? Pero the bars, it differs. Kasi minsan, pag sobrang flared na, kailangan i-adjust mo na, medyo papasok yung bar mo para lang mag-neutralize yung wrist mo. The wrist should always be relaxed when you're on the handlebar. Kasi minsan, pag flared na siya, nakadiretso pa rin siya, yung elbow mo will be forced to pop out like this. If you're popping your elbow like this, you're putting a lot of pressure on your neck, on your nape, and your nape na. So, you follow where the wrist is comfortable and you follow yung drop ng shoulders mo and ng elbows mo. It has to be comfortable. And that means you have the correct angle of the shifter on your bar.
Ayan. Ito na, ang Boss Lito Vicencio. Sige na nga, let me ask one of the most controversial and contentious issues in a bike fit. Length of crank arm, should we go shorter or longer?
That's a very good question. It doesn't have to always be shorter. It doesn't have to be always longer. Like what I said, it differs on the biomechanics of the rider. If you see a rider having troubles pedaling because he has tightness on the hip flexors, tightness on the hip extensors, then a shorter crank arm will help open up that hip para mag-smoothen out yung pedaling niya. Or if you have a rider who's a very big tummy, na on every upstroke, naiipit na yung tiyan niya, then a shorter crank arm will help. Or let's say, for triathlon, if you want the rider to be more aerodynamic, to go lower in the front end but still maintain a good open hip angle for power production and pedaling efficiency, a shorter crank will help. But if you see yourself doing more of climbing, like you're living in Baguio, you're living in Tagaytay, I usually tell my clients, get the correct length for your height or your inseam length. Usually if you're 5'6", 5'7", I always tell them, shortest you could get is 165. If you have a normal biomechanic, longest you could get probably a 170. But if you're around 5'8", that's where medyo magkakaroon ng differences. Kasi I have clients, right, 5'8", riding road bikes with a 172.5 who feels very good. If I put them in a 170, they feel garbage. Parang hindi na sila makapedal ng maayos. It all differs, it all boils down on the biomechanics of the rider. Pag maganda ang movement ng hip niya, maganda ang movement ng legs niya, okay, you could stay with a longer crank. But if you have tightness on the legs, if you see also na pag every pedal stroke ng rider, umaangat na yung balakang on the saddle like this, it means hindi niya na-extend ng ayos yung leg niya, tight masyado yung hip niya, a shorter crank will help stabilize the rider on the bicycle.
Yan. Ito from Justin Rodriguez. Sir, any recommendations for wide feet riders?
I always tell my clients, it differs. If you have a wide feet, the widest you could go that is available in the market is Lake. Lake has a wide model. Usually, if you have a size E, I have something for you.
Ayan. Kasi yung Lake, yung normal ng Lake, malapad na, may wide pa pala yun, no? Guys, pansin niya si Paco, kumakain na lang dyan sa baba. Nanahimik, kain lang siya ng kain.
I always recommend bike, especially if you're selling shoes, to have a Brannock device like this. The Brannock device will not only help you identify the correct length of shoe, but also will help you check the correct width of shoe for the rider. Usually, if you have a rider with a foot size na pumapatak sa E or E2, E3, automatically it's a wide foot na. If you have a wide foot, there are brands that offers wide shoes. We have Lake. They have if you want off the shelf, Lake can get you. Bond, they have the Asian fit or the wide fit na available now. Specialized just launched their wide fit models, which is also good. If you have really wide foot, the option that we have is Rocket 7. It's available in US. Rocket 7. Usually, if you have triple E shoot wide na, hindi ka na rin papasok sa Lake, Rocket 7 will work for you. Medyo talaga they specialize in wide foot riders na talaga. Pag if you have wide foot, I'm sorry to say, hindi ka papasok sa mga Mavic, sa mga Physique. Shimano E, meron pa rin po. Pero usually Italian shoes, you're not gonna fit on it.
Yun. Jim Charles Morales. Hi, Sir Frederick. I keep getting saddle sores on the left between the leg and the butt, but not the right. I'm using a good quality bib and saddle. What should I do with it?
Start with checking your saddle height. Usually, if you're having problems with one side soreness, it could be you could have some asymmetries on your body, like possible you have a shorter leg. So you could probably adjust it by try lowering the saddle height. If it doesn't improve, then maybe we need to put some foot supports on your shoe to make you more stable when pedaling, to prevent one of your hip from dropping in every pedal stroke. It's the dropping hip that usually leads to, it's the dropping side of the hip, ang nangyayari, yung kabilang hip na hindi nagda-drop, yun yung medyo nagkakaroon ng saddle sores kasi naiipit po siya.
Yan. Good evening, Sir Chuck Ronquillo, our record holder for the longest show. Ayup ka, pinagod mo kami last week. Ito, Sir Arnel Castro. Hello, what's your take on midfoot cleat position? Gusto mo.
Midfoot cleat position is very good. I always recommend midfoot cleat position if you're doing endurance rides. For triathlon, some athletes prefer midfoot cleat position. Why? Kasi it puts the load on the midfoot, it lessens the load on the calves and the ankles. So pagbaba ng rider on the bike, mas fresher siya para tumakbo. Same thing when you're doing like mga ODAX, like mga 1,200 kilometers, 800 kilometers, 600 kilometers. If you put your clit in the mid, you're using mostly the bigger muscles. You're using mostly the bigger hams. So mas relax ka, mas efficient ka. It doesn't have a sprinting power, pero you're more efficient in pedaling. Pero nowadays, we have a new study. Wait, I'm going to show this.
Dami nyo natutunan this week, no? Ayos ba, guys? Parang at least may ano yung kung ano yung pagka-nonsense namin ni Chuck last week, natin ni Chuck last week.
Usually, riders with shoes more than size 12 above or bigger shoes, yung shoes na ginagawa ng mga manufacturer, yung clit position, masyado pa ring mataas. Kaya nangyayari, we're forced to put this kind of clit adjusters para mas mai-lower namin yung cleats para mas medyo, not really midfoot, pero medyo nasa ilalim ng ball, ng pedal spindle, nasa gitna medyo yung pedal spindle para lesser yung pressure sa toes, lesser pressure sa knees, mas nakaka-power pa rin sila. Usually the problem nowadays, the bigger the shoe, the higher the clit holes are, the more we need to put it down to let the rider ride more comfortable on the bike. That's why we use these clit adjusters to give them to let them adjust the clits more lower para mas efficient sila.
Yan. CP Hernandez, ano po yung mas importanteng unahin? Bike fit or iwasan po yung mga kaibigan na upgrade na pati ikaw dinadamay? Ayos!
Parang hindi mo may iwasan yung CP kasi pag nagpa-fit ka sa akin, laging kumpleto eh. Laging kasama sa mga yan.
Yun ang tip, huwag kayo magsama ng kaibigan pag nagpa-bike fit kayo kasi baka, di ba?
Totoo po.
Eto, Tim Sapurko. Hello, tanong ko lang po. What could cause pain in the perineum? Di ko alam yung tamang tawag sa part na yon. Part between the anus and genitals. Tawag dyan, pateros. Bagsakan ng itlog. Yung pateros.
That's what we call the soft tissue. Okay, the soft tissue of part of the genital area. So, like what I said, many possible factors. Saddle height, clit position, or sometimes the saddle itself. Usually, pag sa soft tissue ng area, try lowering the saddle. Pag hindi mo pa rin nakuha, try a saddle with a cutout that will lessen the pressure on that area. Yeah.
Ano pa to? Gino de la Peña. Hello, Boss Gino. Boss Martin, pag malaki ba ang tinaba mo dahil sa ECQ, kailangan mo magpa-refit? Mukhang nag-enjoy.
Kailangan po talaga. Hindi ka po nag-iisa, Boss Gino. Kahit ako po, ang laki ng tinaba ko ng ECQ po. So, yung mga bike ko, pinagtataas ko lahat ng handlebar.
Naku, patay. Hindi tayo pwede magtaas ng handlebar. Theo James Navarro, anong size para sa 5'6.5 na ano to? Anong size para sa 5'6 and a half na RB frame? So I guess 5'6 and a half yung height niya. Anong size ng road bike? Small.
Usually, like what I said, sir, small if we're following the standard sizing. Kasi wag lang tutulad ng elves na baka yung small 44. Okay. So, small or 52, papasok po sa kanya. If he prefers a more comfortable riding. But if he's like someone who wants to go criteriums, he's more of a sprinter, he could choose to go to a smaller size bike, like a 48. Para he can take advantage of the longer stem for sprinting.
Ito, malapit sa ano to. Alam ko tong tanong na to. Chris Rodriguez, anong possible causes ng inner knee pain?
Inner knee pain. So is it in the medial part of the knee or is it in the patella itself? Inner knee pain, is it sa loob po or sa mismong gitna ng tuhod, the patella? If it's in the middle part of the knee, it's in the inner part of the knee, it's a clit position. Possible, you need to adjust your clits outward to put your feet inward to align with the knee para hindi po siya mag-cause ng misalignment issue. Kasi anong nangyayari, pag ang sipa mo, pag ganito po, nagkakaroon niya ng misalignment sa foot mo at sa knee mo, which is causing problems in the medial part of the knee. So what you do is you push your clit all the way out to put your foot all the way in para mas diretso yung galaw ng tuhod mo. Or if you're feeling it more on the patella, or let's say for example yung gitna ng tuhod, possible it could be a saddle height issue. Try raising your saddle height a few millimeters, probably 3 to 5 millimeters to lessen the knee flexion on the upstroke. Kasi yung knee flexion, let's say yung tuhod masyado kageto sa upstroke, it puts a lot of stress on the patella of the knee. Sa patella natin.
Ayan. Wait, ito. Ano ulit yung measurement ng inseam times
Ito.
0.8? Tama ba yan?
0.880 or 887.
880. O yan, teka lang. Flash mo na sa screen. O guys, screenshot mo na. Okay, pag post mo na tayo. Para matandaan nyo siya, screenshot nyo na yan habang nasa screen. O, diba? 5 seconds. Go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. O yan, may reference na kayo sa saddle height nyo pag pang sukat. Ano pa ba? Dami niyong tanong
Madami.
Dami. What's the best angle position for saddle? Any suggestions? Lalo na sa mga chill ride lang. New road bike user from Ronel Serrano.
I always tell my clients, start with the level saddle, 0-0 level, para to make you more stable on the saddle, to lessen the weight on the hands, to put more of your weight on the saddle, para mas balance kayo sa bisikleta, para you can sustain the position longer. It will help put more power in every pedal stroke, at the same time, help keep you more comfortable on the bicycle.
Ayan. Ito, from Marcos Hadsad, how do you address riders with very short reach? Reach naman. She is using a folding bike and her traps are nangangalay after the ride.
If it's the traps, I think it's not the reach, it's more of the handlebar width. Usually, if the handlebars are wide, it puts a lot of ngalay on the traps. So go for a narrower handlebar. If it doesn't work, go for a shorter stem or a more higher angled stem or higher pitch stem para mas relax. But usually it's either the bars are too wide or at the same time the saddle is too far forward. Try moving the saddle backward for a few centimeter, probably 5 millimeter, then lower the saddle around 3 millimeter, and then raise the handlebar. It will lessen the weight in the front and transfer more of the weight of the saddle.
Yun. So I guess guys, pag meron kayo may mga nasagot na si Boss Martin na applicable sa inyo, you can always watch the episode again and para just to go back to yung mga answers na applicable sa inyo. Shout out to Boss Randall. Siya yung gumawa ng plate number ng motor ko. What's up, sir? Vince Corpus. Ito, magandang tanong. Iba naman. When one comes for, question ni Vince, when one comes for a bike fit, what should he be prepared to do? What should he bring? Diba?
Okay, that's a very good question. I always tell my clients to come in with fresh legs. I always tell them to take it easy 2 days before the fitting, and then bring everything that you're using, your bicycle, your helmet, your sunglasses, your bike tools, your pump, everything that you're using with you when you're riding the bike. It's very important that you bring it. Kasi sometimes we have equipment that affects our muscle activation and pelvic alignment. Usually sunglasses and helmet put some tilt on the pelvic. We've proven this so many times. And then at the same time, we have to make sure that we have to reverse the polarity of your equipment to work with your body and not against the body.
Yan.
And then it's important that if you want to have a very good position,
1 sec.
if you have a fitting session 2-3 months from now, work on your mobility, work on your core strength and your flexibility para mas mapaganda natin yung posisyon sa bisikleta po. You do core strengthening, you do yoga, stretching, it will help a lot in the outcome of the fitting session.
Yan. Ano? Wow, wait. Daming tanong ah. Maiba naman from Chino Galvez. Maiba naman sa bike fit. What's your favorite bike?
Ako ayoko pong maging bias, pero I have a bastion. It's my
Yan.
bike. Opo, pero if there's one thought gun na bike na I wanted to buy back, it's a 2013 Giant PCR aluminum.
Wow, Vince
I've always
Marcos.
loved that bicycle. I don't know why, pero it's that bicycle where I parang feel na parang sobrang I'm connected with the bike talaga po. It's not a carbon, it's just an aluminum na TCR.
Ako magtatanong din, related to that. Ano yung bike na pag pumasok sa shop, sa studio, yung pag nakita mo na yung bike, putang ina, patay tayo dito. Ito na naman siya. Yung tamat mahabang araw. Alam mo yun, yung what bike or bikes are the hardest to fit and to adjust?
Magagalit sa akin si boss nito eh. One bike that I'm having a hard time, pero it's a very beautiful bike. I love working on the bike. It's Farley.
Farley.
Medyo complicated yung adjustments niya. Si Boss Aldrich, alam niya po yan. We're always having hard time working on the Farley. Another is felt. I don't like the adjustments on the clamping ng felt IA. Ay, naku, sobrang sakit sa ulo. Minsan yung quick fit lang magiging matagal kasi hindi mo makuha yung adjustment ng bisikleta. Other than that, I hate the cockpit of the old P5 kasi it limits what you can do. Minsan pag gusto mong ibaba yung harapan, kailangan putulin yung handlebar, yung steerer tube niya. Kaya if we're working with P5, usually I prefer working with it on a fit bike para maitama muna namin yung position bago namin putulin. Kasi pag nagputol po kami,
wala na
balikan. Tapos na po.
Balikan yun.
Lagot na po kami. Usually, yun yung mga nagkakaproblema kami ng bike. Pero equipment-wise, I hate working sa black ink na seat post.
Nakaganon ako dati.
Sobrang pain in the ass po yung seat post. Akala mo dali-dali i-adjust, kailangan mo i-dismantle ulit para lang ma-adjust mo yung tilt ng saddle. Opo. Pero pag nakuha mo naman, hindi na siya gumagalaw. Pero yun nga lang, it's harder to work on a black ink versus a felt IA na seat post po.
Wow. Ato, from Mark Del Mundo, would you say that 10 millimeters makes a big difference in terms of size? Example, 100 millimeter stem versus 110 millimeter stem.
Yes, it does.
Oo.
In cycling, every millimeter matters.
Yun.
Even 10 millimeters will make a big difference, not just on the wrist, even in the saddle height. So we don't look in 10 millimeter at a time. What we always do, we look at it 3 millimeter at a time if you're adjusting on the seat height. On the stem, 10 millimeters can either make you comfortable or could either give you a lot of problems on the reach.
Mabalik tayo sa stem since we're talking about it. What's your, bakit ka tumatawa pa ako? Ba't alam mo na yung tanong? Hindi. Kasi, Boss Martin, so when you buy a frame, a road bike, I'm talking about road bike frames, usually the stock stem is like a 90, di ba? 90 millimeter stem. So ano ba where do you, because I've seen bikes with shorter stems, like 80, 70, ganyan. Where do you draw the line? Where do you stop na pag sinabi na, pag nag-70 millimeter stem ka na, ibig sabihin, parang better na siguro na mag-size down ka na?
That's true po.
Saan natin i-draw yung line na, kasi I'm guessing if it comes with a 90 millimeter stem na stock, siya na yung shortest recommended you can go.
If you ask me that question 4 years ago, I will tell you, if you go beyond 80, the bike is too long for you na po. But if you ask me
shorter than 80, okay.
But if you ask me that question now, I would say if you go shorter than 70, that the frame is too long for you na. Kasi we have bikes like Giant and other brands now putting 80 millimeter, sometimes 70 millimeter stems on their bicycle. It means they've adjusted the geometry on top of the bike already to work with a shorter stem to accommodate shorter riders na, which is very good for the industry. They're starting to learn to adjust on the needs of the rider. Pero back in the day, if we put 80, 70, it means sobrang haba na po yung stem. Nowadays, you see Live, you see Specialized and other bikes na stock may kasama na 80 or shorter stem. It means that geometry of the bike is adjusted to work with that short stem. So it's still okay.
Okay. Ayan. Joseph David, how about back of the knee pain?
The back of the knee pain only tells one thing. Either the saddle is too high na, you're hyperextending your leg na, or sometimes the saddle is too low na, you're dropping your heels too much na. So nangyayari, na-stretch na rin yung posterior part ng knee mo.
Okay. Gab Domingo, good evening. Normal po ba na may sumakit sa knee pag nag-change ka from circle to oval chainring?
Yes, because it takes 12 weeks to adapt. Oh, no. It takes 6 weeks to fully adapt on an oval ring po. So biomechanically, adjust na your ankling, your knee movement. So give your body time to fully adapt. I always tell my clients, if you're changing from round to circles, take it easy for first few weeks kasi may sasakit po. You're activating different muscle leg groups din po.
Alfie Evaristo, sir, hi sirs. Curious lang, how many and what bikes do you own? Yan na. Yung declared o yung alam na?
yung pahiram.
Ano ba? Sige, sagutin natin. Boss Martin.
I have a couple of bikes, probably 5.
Ayun. Anong
I have
brand? What bikes do you own? So your Bastion?
I have a Bastion. I have a De Rosa. I have Colnago. I have a
Hindi naman. Tumingin sa garahe. Meron pala ako nito.
Baka may nakikinig.
Na-blanco. I have another gravel bike. No, sorry, na blah blah. I love that gravel bike. Maalala ko mamaya yung pangalan. But then I have a mountain bike. My favorite bike is my generic mountain bike. I got it for like 30,000. I call it my lucky bike. I only ride it once a year. We've been through a lot of tough times. Lahat mga races. So it never failed me. That's why I love it. It's an aluminum mountain bike na naka-Diore lang siya. It's my Hasa bike. So if you ask me which is the most important bike of all, it's my Hasa mountain bike. Kasi when I was just starting, yun na yung bisikleta ko. Na siya lang yung hindi ko may benta-bentang bisikleta. Nice. Parang may sentimental value po siya sa akin.
Ikaw pa ako. Sirs so tayong tatlo.
Oo nga eh.
How many bikes?
Yung bike na sa akin talaga at hindi galing sa team, meron akong Canyon dito na small. Na, yan, tama yung sinasabi ni Sir Frederick kanina na mas mahaba yung reach niya. So, kailangan mo nag-adjust ako ng konti sa stem. Ano pa ba? Yun lang ata. Hindi, meron akong Trek nandyan sa Pilipinas. Emonda. Ultegra lang yun. And since nag-uusap tayo tungkol sa bike fit, small lang rin yun. Small na may 140mm na stem. Dahil may see yung reach niya.
Parang gintano pala, sir.
Yun ang maganda.
Zip sprint yun. Kaya maganda yun. Maganda yung pag malaki yung stem na yun. Pogi. Tapos meron akong mountain bike na Specialized S-Works. So, yun yung medyo talagang magandang mahalin na bike. Mahalin at mahal na bike. Kasi dito sa lugar namin, maraming races din ng mountain bike na pwede mong salihan pag off-season, pag wala kang magawa. So, maganda magkaroon ng magandang mountain bike para mas maging competitive ka dun sa race. Hindi yung pag nasa likod ka kasi hindi ka masyado enjoy eh. Pag upakan ka sa harap, yun yung enjoy. Pero tatlo lang, yan yung tatlong bike lang na yun. Plus tatlo from the team.
Jorby.
Yan.
Yan.
Yun talaga yung the best. Pinakamaganda yun. Wala pa.
Yung naalala ko na, Sir, IBs.
Maganda yun. Maganda.
Opo.
Ako
Ayan, ikaw Mars, ano naman ang mga pahiram sa'yo na bike dyan?
Ako I only have one bike to rule them all. Okay ba?
Maganda yan, ha? Okay yun,
one bike to rule them all. Specialized S-Work SL7 na 52, tapos 120 na stem.
Yeah. Parang kailangan niya pag nag-i-introduce ka ng sarili mo, di ba? Ako nga pala si Paco, 140 stem.
140, sarap. Pero di ba, Boss Martin?
100 lang ang stem ko.
Actually, kapag off-season, yun yung may nagtanong kanina kung ilang beses kami nagpapa-bike fit dito. Ideally, nasa 4 to 6 times ka a year magpapa-bike fit. Every after isang block ng matinding training or racing. After ng isang block ng races, kailangan mo hindi man kailangan, pero ideally magpapa-bike fit ka. Kasi ang daming naiiba, kahit fitness lang yung pagbasihan natin. Maraming maiiba sa fit eh. Kasi yung style mo ng riding, yung flexibility mo, mobility ng katawan mo naiiba. Yung roles mo within the race, the team, naiiba rin. So, kaya yan, usually kapag after ng races, meron kang choice kung mas magiging aggressive yung fit or mas relax kasi isipin mo yung mga races na nagagawin mo. Kahit anong race, kahit siguro sa Pilipinas na sali ka ng Gran Fondo or kung anumang ODAX, hindi biro yung 8 hours, 10 hours kang nasa isang posisyon na ang relief mo lang ay tumigil or tumayo ng konti. So, talagang kailangan mo magpa-bike fit na maayos and yung every time na may maiiba sa'yo, kailangan mo talagang bumalik at ayusin ulit. I-check. Kahit i-check lang kasi sobrang importante ng efficiency mo sa bike, yung comfortability mo. Ibang usapan 'yon kapag hindi ka na komportable, tas kailangan mo pang umuwi, di ba? Medyo hindi na masaya.
Ito. Rainier Palayo. How about unpadded saddle? Like, paano babasahin to? Makfok?
TFK na, sir. Makfok yung iba.
Diba? Or Burke Lupina. Ito yung mga saddle na bare carbon lang, yung walang padding, walang foam. Ano yung
when I was still studying in fitting schools, there was this one pro who told me na if you're a light rider, the more you need paddings on the saddle. Kasi pag na-unpadded yung saddle mo, tatalbog ka ng tatalbog doon sa saddle. If you're a heavy rider, the more you need stiffer saddle para hindi ka lumubog doon sa cushioning ng saddle. So it differs per person talaga. So I usually it applies din naman. Ako, I have a Burke, it's a padded saddle. Nagmamatcha sa akin kasi medyo heavy ako. So hindi ako lumulubog dun sa upuan. Pero if I get to use yung mga Cobbs dati, it's very comfortable sa akin first 100 kilometers and eventually after 130, 140, ramdam ko na lumulubog na ako sa saddle. Nagkakaroon na ng mga discomforts po. Pero in terms of padding, sometimes it depends on the mileage that you want to ride. I've seen some people who can ride unpadded saddles for 200 kilometers. Then I've seen some people na after 70 kilometers, I know a lot of clients, after 70 kilometers, nagrereklamo na sila because the padding is not giving them that much comfort. That's why I always recommend, if you're using an unpadded saddle, invest in a very good bib shorts because
Yeah.
that will help you get more comfort when you're riding the bicycle.
Yun. Eto, Mark Del Mundo. Do you agree with the idea that Asian-made bikes have better geometry for us Asian versus the geometry of other known brands?
There are actually brands na pag tiningnan natin parang, wow, where did they get those measurements? If we look at them parang medyo malaki, like kay Sir Paco, the Canyon, we can all agree that Canyon has a bigger sizing in terms of
Bigger
sizing sa
size.
bike. At the same time, we have the Ridley bikes, medyo mahaba din yung sizing niya. Pero it doesn't mean that if it's an Asian bike, tama yung sizing sa atin. Why? One, for example, is the Giant Trinity. That's one tri-bike that has the weirdest sizing of all. Yung small niya can fit a 5'10 rider.
Oh,
The
wow.
small, if you're like a 5'7, it will be too big for you na. So, it differs from manufacturer talaga. It doesn't mean if it's an Asian manufacturer, they were made specifically for Asians. Like what I said, all the while when I was fitting, kung hindi pa ako na-travel sa Europe, sa Australia, akala ko Asians are the only ones na maiksi ang inseam, mahaba ang torso. But eventually when I did fittings in other countries, nakita ko na, teka, they have the same body types that we have. Some people has the same body type, not all of them, but so it doesn't apply talaga na Asian bikes are for Asians only. No.
So yung the best way, anong number yung kailangan mong i-look out for? Yung reach, yung stock, yung
Stock, reach, ano yung basis for
So
picking?
the balance of the stack and reach po. You always want to make sure you get the balance of the stack and reach. Plus, you want to make sure then that you get the C-tube angle. And the reach definitely tells how high the head tube is, but you also want to consider the head tube angle. The slacker the head tube angle, the more comfortable with it. The steeper the head tube angle, the more it will be agile when you're riding the bicycle.
slacker, meaning mas nakalabas
Mas malapit
yung
po sa'yo.
okay.
Opo, pag nag-stiffen siya, medyo mas naka-forward, medyo aggressive niya yung positioning mo on the bike. Same thing with if you look at the C-tube angles of the bicycle nowadays, comparing before na C-tube angles of the bikes are 72, 73 degree. Nowadays, you get to see 75, 74.5, or even steeper. Kasi they notice that they're designing the bikes for racers. So they notice that some racers wants to be more forward on the bike to be able to put power on the pedal stroke. So they have to adjust the geometry of the bike for that. At the same time, para mas balance sila when turning downhills, going fast. So they're really adjusting in the bike depending on the goals of every rider po talaga.
Ako may question Sir Martin. So, kasi di ba, with our show, we always target the beginners. Yung mga ito lang, kakabili lang ng bike, yung first bike and ano. So, let's say, I just bought my first bike. May ride-in time ba yun before I should get a bike fit? Do I mag-ride muna ba ako ng ilang 1, 2, 3 months before going to get a bike fit, or do I need to get a bike fit as soon as I get my bike?
That's a very good question po, sir.
Diba? Kasi yung iba parang
I prefer a rider coming into me who has mileage already on the bicycle rather than working with a virgin bike na they don't know the bike yet. Parang hindi pa nila kilala yung bisikleta. Mas
hindi pa
gusto ko
nasasakyan.
hindi pa nila mas gusto ko yung kilala nila yung bisikleta, nasakyan na nila, they can give me more feedbacks on how they feel when they're riding. They know what they're looking for on the bicycle. Alam na nila kung ano yung hinahanap nila, alam na nila kung ano yung mga na-encounter nila ng problem. So it will be easier for us to work with the fit. At the same time, it will be easier for them to adapt on the bicycle. Usually what I do, if I have clients coming in, beginners, new bikes, I do a basic fit on them. Then I'll tell them, come back to me after a month or two, get mileage on the bike. Then after that, then we'll go on with a comprehensive bike fitting para marami ka ng feedback na sasabihin sa akin regarding on your position.
So
Mas
kung August
po natin yung position.
So kung August pa yung next available mo, Mag-schedule na kayo ngayon para by August, saktong kilala nyo na yung bike nyo. Para pag nagpa-fit kayo sa August, yun na, game na. Sakto na kayo.
What I do naman is, if I have clients na book for longer time, I help them adjust their fits, online fitting po muna. So we schedule online fitting on the weekends or sometimes in the evening na help them to ride it comfortably until the time that we get it fitted to them. Kasi I understand mahirap din naman na matagal po silang panahon mag-aantay for their fitting na titiisin nila yung discomforts nila sa bisikleta.
Yan. Brian Vergara, thoughts about TT saddles for road bikes? TT saddles are time trial saddles or yung mga nasa tri-bike, di ba?
Yes po. For road bike, it depends. If you plan to use your road bike on a time trial bike, it will work. If you plan to use your road bike on a triathlon, where you'll put clip-on aero bars, it will work. But if you plan to use your road bike for road racing or endurance riding with a tri-saddle, medyo magkakaroon tayo ng problema kasi tri-saddles are manufactured to push you forward, to let you roll your hip forward para mas maka-aero position ka. So mangyayari, in terms of handling wise, medyo feeling mo front-loaded ka, medyo feeling mo parang malalaglag ka sa bisikleta pag nagdi-descend ka ng mahaba, mabilis. At the same time, medyo feeling mo may weight ka sa kamay. Not unless you're a very light and very strong rider na ang mangyayari, every time you're pedaling, yung weight mo napupunta sa pedal stroke, na-unload mo yung weight sa kamay mo. Usually, I've seen this with mga pro triathletes, UCI triathletes, ITU triathletes, or sa mga pro riders na sobrang lakas yung power na pinuproduce nila, hindi nila nararamdaman na front-loaded na sila. Kasi every pedal nila, natatransfer nila yung weight nila sa pedal stroke. So nawawala sa kamay po nila. But in terms of balancing descents, fast descents, iba pa rin yung stability na mo-offer ng road saddle versus a tri-saddle. A road saddle will make you feel more stable when you're descending fast kasi may squeeze mo yung nose ng saddle and mas nakaupo ka sa tail ng saddle. So, mas balansyado ka pag nagdi-descend ka na mas mabilis.
Chuck Maceda. Ayan. So that we have an idea, how much do you charge for bike fitting and how many hours?
It differs per location po. In Manila, I charge 7,500 pesos. In Nuvali, it's 6,000. In San Pablo City, since I'm from San Pablo, I don't have to travel to Manila. I don't have expenditure, so it's 4,000 pesos only. I choose to maintain my rate if starting from the day I started fitting kasi I want to be able to work with more people. For me, the income is more of a bonus na lang. I love working on people. I love working on bicycles. So fitting takes minimum 4 hours. Sometimes it takes 5-6 hours depending on the issues that every rider has on the bicycle.
And yung fee na to kasama yung yung refitting or
yes po, ito one-time payment lang po. They don't have to pay me a single centavo to readjust the bike, refit the bike, not unless they want me to do a body alignment sa kanila, like a Steve Hogg fitting, medyo may additional siya. Pero kunwari na Steve Hogg ko na sila, wala na po silang kailangan bayaran sa akin. Kasi I want to make sure we get to maximize their bicycle. At the same time, they get to maximize what they're paying me for. I love seeing my clients evolving. I love seeing my clients improving. Knowing that my clients performing at their best, it's enough for me na. It's enough to make me very happy na.
Ayan. At saka kasi ako kay Sir Martin ako nagpapa-bike fit eh. It's not just the bike eh. It's yun na nga, parang yung bike, yung shoes, yung cleat position mo, yung 'di ba? It's not just like adjusting yung height ng saddle, yung length ng stem, yung angle ng ganyan. Medyo may process din siya. Tapos ang maganda din, you appreciate what happens when you get on the bike after na. There's so many factors pala na ang dahil palang kailangan gawin para ma-achieve mo yung fit na maayos. So, actually, masayang experience ka. If you're the one getting the bike fit, bigla ma-realize mo na, okay, kasi ang dami palang factors na kailangan kong alam na that affect my position or my being comfortable on the bike. So it's, aside from just getting fitted, yung experience masaya rin. It's the
I think
learning
based sa comments and questions na sa dami ng nakuha natin today, nakasama natin si Sir Martin ngayon, isa siyang testament na yung relasyon natin sa bike, hindi siya basta sasakyan mo lang. Meron kang parang symbiotic relationship na kailangan maayos yung relasyon nyo ng bike. And I think pumunta ka for a bike fit, mas magiging malalim yung relasyon mo dun sa bike dahil nakikilala mo yung tulad ng mga specific na as in 1, 2, 3 millimeters na difference ng saddle height, fore and aft, or handlebar, width, stem, lahat. Marirealize mo na hindi lang siya basta, ito yung bike, sakyan mo. Meron kang, lalo yung sinasabi ni Sir Martin na okay, bago ka pumunta sa kanya, kailangan medyo nasakyan mo na, di ba? Meron kang experience dun sa bike, medyo may mga tanong ka na tungkol dun sa bisikleta mo, may mga feedback ka tungkol sa angle nung kung ano man. Ito yung nafe-feel ko, ito yung masakit, ito yung feeling kong mas maganda. Tapos pag pumunta ka sa kanya, kilala mo na yung hindi lang philosophically sa sarili mo, pati yung bike mo, technical na aspects ng bike mo, alam mo rin. And I think ito talaga yung isa sa mga motivations natin, Mars, sa pagbuo ng show is mapalabas natin yung magandang culture ng bisikleta, 'di ba? Yung buhay na kasama mo yung bike.
Kasi hindi, parang yun na nga it's not, yung bike dapat hindi siya external na 'di ba? Pag nag-connect ka na sa bike mo, wala, parang yun na yun, buong araw kayong magkasama, so dapat magkasundo talaga kayo 'di ba?
I think Sir Martin, meron akong isang tanong lang na
meron ding mga tahimik mo diyan.
Teka lang, nag-iisip ako ng mga tanong pinaprocess ko lahat Pagbalik ko sa bike fit, mas marami na akong alam sa bike fitter ko. Yari siya. Hindi, yung tanong ko, meron bang mga specific na type ng tao or katawan nung rider na hindi talaga papasok dun sa isang brand ng bike?
Yes po. And then, not only one brand of bike, may mga tao po talaga na ang kailangan nila is custom bike po talaga.
Oh, wow.
These are the biomechanically challenged riders. At the same time, yung mga body proportion nila is medyo off na talaga. Like, super short reach, na maiksi rin yung upper body nila. So, the only way you could do is wala kang minsan, or wala kang makikita na geometry na papasok sa kanila na nasa off the shelf. So, it will require a custom frame, or usually nangyayari to pag sobrang tangkad ng tao, like mga 6'8", 6'7" above, usually hirap na kami kumuha ng frame para sa kanila. Nagmumukha ng BMX yung mga bike sa kanila, or sometimes mga 4'8", 4'9" below, hirap na rin po kami kumuha ng bike na papasok sa kanila, not unless it's 650C, 650B, or something kailangan 24-incher na bisikleta. Pero we have to ask them before going with it, are you willing to ask a 24-incher na bike? Pero going back sa tinanong ni Sir Paco, marami pong pagkakataon na nangyayari na may mga katawan ng tao hindi talaga papasok sa a certain type of brand of bicycles. Opo. Usually, issue namin yan with Canyon. Kasi Canyon, big sizing plus yung kanilang mga cockpit, hindi ka makapili. Anong width, stem length. So, minsan, kailangan mag-compensate, kailangan mag-sacrifice ng tao sa handlebar width para lang makuha niya yung reach na hinahanap niya. Or sometimes, usually this is an issue, this is the problem that we have nowadays, na nagkakaroon ng mga integrated cockpits. Integrated cockpits, they got it from Formula 1, the design. So to make it cleaner, which is really helpful, based sa wind tunnel, when we did wind tunnel, if you clean the front of the bike, no cables, it could help you 15, 17 watts. It could save you 15, 17 watts. Pero nangyayari nga lang, fitting-wise, nagkakaproblema po tayo. Kasi it limits the type of people or rider that could fit that kind of bicycle, not unless we change the cockpit into a more adjustable one. Opo.
Ako yung question ko dyan, because I've seen like sometimes I go to a bike shop or di ba, people ask me, sometimes yun na nga, for women cyclists, or I have friends na women na they want to get into cycling, pero yun na nga, medyo hindi masyadong matangkad. Like 5, 4'11", di ba? So if they go for a custom frame, will they be able to go with 700cc tires?
It depends pa rin po. We have dealt with some manufacturers na they prefer a smaller wheel because of the toe overlap in the handling. And then we have some manufacturers naman na they've been doing it for a long time, na they know how to go around the problems, na nagagawa nila ng paraan pumasok ang 700C. Usually, pag mga 410, 411, nagagawan pa ng paraan pumasok ang 700C. But if you're shorter than that, definitely, a smaller size will help, not just for handling, but also stability on the bicycle po. Kasi sometimes we have to consider the standover height na rin. Kasi pag 700C, hindi na rin shoot, sasabit na rin sa private area nila. So the smaller wheel will help give more space for the standover height para hindi po sila nagkakaroon ng problema. They need to stand sa traffic or they need to get off the bike.
But same rin for the women, kasi yun nga. Is it okay for a female cyclist to buy a men's frame?
Yes, why not?
Okay.
I don't see any problems with that. Kasi minsan makita natin may mga female na mas matatangkad pa rin sa mga male. Opo, may mga female na sobrang haba na mga, usually females have really long arms, long wingspan, so kailangan nila yung longer reach, so pumapasok. Pero that is very limited po. Most of the time, what we see, especially with Filipinos, medyo petit yung riders natin, we require smaller bikes po, like 44 below, 42 below. Opo, very limited yung mahabang kalis na babae, like who's this model in na specialized from New York? Monica. Yeah. She looks really good on the bicycle. Yeah. How I wish every female rider would be like her. Pero like what I said, hindi po lahat tulad niya. So dun tayo nagkakaroon ng problema, which is what I'm happy nowadays is more and more manufacturers are seeing these problems and they are doing things to help more riders, smaller petite riders, to be able to ride their bicycles.
Sige, wait. Before it's almost 2 hours na naman tayo. Hindi natin nabulin si Chuck this week. Guys, if you have any more last questions, post nyo na para bago tayo mag-wrap up.
Ako meron akong last.
Ikaw.
Pero para lang magkaroon ng idea yung naubos ko na yung pagkain eh. Yung ganda usapan nyo eh. So kumain muna ako. Yung para lang magkaroon ng idea yung mga tao na baka ngayon hopefully na naging interested sila na magpa-bike fit or kino-consider nila. Ano yung standard na protocols na tanong na rin ni Vince kanina kung ano yung mga kailangan gawin, ano yung preparation na kailangan nilang gawin bago pumunta. Pero pag nandyan na sila, kunwari, nakapag-book na sila ng bike fit, pumunta na sila, dala nila yung bike nila, ano yung i-expect nila na nagagawin nyo? Kasi sabi mo, mga 4 hours yung process, di ba? So baka pwede mo kaming i-take through doon sa process na yun.
Po ako sa protocols kasi like I said, medyo natakot din ako because of the pandemic. So I require all my clients to have rapid tests before fitting. Kasi why? I'm not the kind of fitter na nag-adjust lang po ng bikes. I work with my client's body. I start my fitting by knowing my client. We start with an in-depth interview, knowing the history of the client, injuries, the goals. Then we do an assessment. We measure the rider's body, the insim, the weight distribution of the left and right side of the body. We measure the forefoot, the foot. We do some tests on the biomechanics of the rider, like flexibility, mobility. Then we check if the rider has asymmetries, like imbalances. One leg is shorter, one hip is higher, or the right leg is tighter than the left leg. So before we let the rider ride on the bike, we start by working on the rider's body. We do a body alignment, a Steve Hogg body alignment. We want to make sure that before we get the rider riding on the bicycle, the rider is more symmetrical in terms of leg length. The rider is more balanced in terms of weight distribution on the left and right side of the body. The rider has increased its mobility, range of motion, and flexibility. So kung dati hindi nila kayang abutin yung foot nila, we make sure that before we start the fit session, we increase that flexibility, more or less they could reach their toes para mas mapaganda natin yung position nila sa bisikleta. Then before getting them on the bike, we work with the shoes. We make sure that we get the correct foot support that the brain wants. It's si Sir Mars na experience ito na it's not me deciding, it's the brain, it's the rider's brain deciding kung saan siya comfortable in terms of foot support. Kasi if the central nervous system is comfortable with the foot support, then he will be able to sustain that type of pedaling all throughout the ride. So mas makaka-power siya sa bisikleta. Then once we get the shoes sorted out, we let the rider pedal on the bike, do warm-ups, observe how the rider is pedaling on the bike. Then we tell the rider what problems we see and what we need to adjust. Then we adjust it until we see that the rider is stable, balanced, comfortable, powerful, and efficient on the bike. Then once we get that, we check if the muscles are working together with the rider. If there's no muscle tightness, if the glutes are firing properly, if the hamstrings are extending properly, or the calves is not tight, then if we see tightness on the calves, or if we see tightness on the obliques or the glutes are not firing, we activate those muscles para mas makapower na mas efficient yung rider. And then after that, we adjust the cleats. Then that's it. We explain the rider what happened to the fitting, and then we give them 3 weeks to give us feedback. Pag kailangan bumalik, pinapabalik natin para mas ma-optimize pa natin yung position. Kasi minsan, may mga rider na hindi natin pwedeng biglain kasi baka may injury sila na nakikita natin na pag mas mapapaganda na natin yung position, mas magaganda, mas gaganda yung sipa nila, mas powerful sila, mas efficient sila sa bicycle. So I'm not just working on the bike itself. I'm working with the rider's body. I'm working with the rider neurologically and biomechanically po.
Yun. Tsaka guys, kung magpapa-bike fit kayo, ako biggest mistake ko bago magpa-bike fit is hindi ako kumain. So, guys, kain kayo, magdala kayo ng tubig. Kasi parang workout din siya eh. Kasi every time you adjust something, you get back on the bike, you pedal, you go harder, you do hard efforts. So, 3-4 hours of kahit mga ilang seconds na pumapadya ka, nakakapagod din siya. So, kain kayo, dala kayong snacks, dala kayong tubig. So, para at least, wala. Kasi mapapagod talaga kayo.
High intensity work. It's like doing intervals for few hours po. Ang goal din po natin is lumabas din kung ano yung mga possible problems na ma-encounter ng rider when they're riding on the road. So that will only happen if we're pushing the rider on the bicycle. But we should be pushing the rider on the right amount of effort lang po. Hindi naman yung sobra. We want to make sure that the effort the rider is doing, if it's an RPE, mga 7 to 8, max of 9 lang. Kasi if you're doing 10, hindi mo naman kayang i-sustain all throughout the ride ang 10 na rate of perceived effort. So gusto natin yung kaya mong i-sustain when you're pedaling on the road po.
Ayan, last few questions before we wrap. Kung may questions pa kayo, please post it.
Yung isa kong experience dyan sa pag-bike fit na may mga interval, usually yung ginagawa namin sa bike fit dito, para kang nag-interval na indoor workout kasi meron kang mga kada adjustment mag 2 minutes to 3 minutes ka na talagang hindi man all out pero yun yung based on yung RPE siguro mga nasa 9.5 yung talagang halos above threshold na effort kasi yun yung importante na posisyon sa amin eh, yung nandun ka sa paano yung tawag nila, yung on the rivet, yung talagang sagaran ka na. kailangan komportable ka sa ganong klaseng effort sa bike mo. Kasi otherwise, mahihirapan ka talagang yung parang pansin nyo kapag yung mga nagbe-20-20 or sumasali sa mga Gran Fondo, minsan pag naka-drafting ka, parang iba yung fit ng bike mo kasi nasa ibang posisyon ka eh. Hinahanap mo yung mas mababa, hinahanap mo yung mas makaka-produce ka ng power kasi ibig sabihin yung fit mo to begin with nandun sa baka mas relaxed siya or mas nandun siya sa pang endurance riding and hindi talaga yung more intense na ride. So, yan, yung sinasabi ni Mars na kumain kayo, maganda kayo na maayos. I'm sure may konting warm-up yan na gagawin nyo. Paghahandaan mo talaga.
Ito nga sabi ni Chuck Ronquillo, workout para kang kumakarera kay Martin. Pedal faster.
Pero tama si Paco. With the level of cycling ni Sir Paco, ganun po talaga na especially pro riders, hinahanap talaga kung saan kayo mas may power tsaka mas efficient and sustainable. Yun po talaga yung goal, especially with your type of riding talaga, sir. Ma-maximize yung katawan ninyo na tatagal po kayo sa position po ninyo.
Ayan. Earl Bautista, off topic. Ano ba to? Pwede na po ba mag-claim ng gulong? Earl, oo, marami. Lahat sila kumuha na ng gulong. Kunin nyo na yung mga gulong na sa Specialized Mall of Asia. Alam ko sila, yung iba nag-post na pick up na nila yung mga gulong na napanalunan nila. So, yan. If you haven't picked up your tires from Specialized Mall, kunin nyo nandun na siya.
Yung mga shoe cover nyo rin, pati yung medyas, pwede nyo rin i-claim dito kung makakarating kayo.
Ito, Brian Vergara, thoughts about climbing bikes with Aero bars. Will it work for triathlon and time trial races? Since I always see Aero frames use Aero bars more than climbing bikes. So, Aero bars on climbing bikes.
If you're going to use it for a certain event like time trial or triathlon, it can help you. When you're climbing, it's always best to climb with your chest open para makakuha ka ng malaking hangin. At the same time, with your upper body more relaxed to put your power more on the pedal stroke. But definitely, if you're descending and if you're a good descender, it will always help if you can descend on the aero bar kasi you're narrower and you're more aerodynamic, especially pagdating mo sa flat areas na o sections na nung courses, mas makakatulong kung may aero bar ka. Kasi the aero bar not only makes you narrow, it makes you faster because not just faster, but it may help you save more energy. Kasi if you're aerodynamic, you're using lesser powers or wattage to propel you faster. So the power that you get to save, you can use it later on the later part of the race, probably on the last stage, like if it's the sprint part of the time trial, mas may ibubuga ka pa, mas may power ka pa, may conserve para po doon. So yes, it will help. But like I said, depending on the type of racing that you're doing.
Tsaka, pakiusap lang kung naka-aero bar kayo sa climbing bike or aero road bike, huwag nyo namang gagawin sa public road na hindi controlled yung environment nyo. Yung bababa ka ng Teresa or na tapos naka-aero bar ka lang na walang kapit sa preno.
Tama po yun.
Ingat lang, guys. Ano pa ba itong mga question? Carl Manuel, how do you deal with asymmetrical legs? Do you recommend... Ay, nawala si Paco. Ito, Carl Manuel, how do you deal with asymmetrical legs? Do you recommend to undergo... Saan ka na ba, Paco? Nawala ka. Ulit. Take 2. Carl Manuel, how do you deal with asymmetrical legs? Do you recommend to undergo therapy or may adjustments you can do on the bike?
Asymmetrical legs, there are different types. There are 2 types for us bike fitters. The first type is functional, meaning you have asymmetrical on your leg because you have muscle tightness, either pelvic tilt, what we're talking about, it could be neuromuscular, or it could be tightness on the muscles, tightness on the obliques, or tightness on the quads that limits the range of motion of the leg, causing one leg to be shorter. So those things can be adjusted during the bike fitting session. We could loosen the obliques, adjust the tilt, balance the tilt if it's functional. But if it's structural, meaning it's the bone length, sometimes if the ratio of the asymmetry is too much, sometimes we need to do X-ray before putting wedges or shims to be able to balance the leg length discrepancy. But the good thing about Steve, he was able to teach us something neurological that will tell us how much shim a rider would need if it's a structural discrepancy. Meaning if it's some bone discrepancy, if it's structural, meaning a bone discrepancy, bone length discrepancy, we can ask the rider's brain neurologically how much shim the rider would be needing to make them more stable on the bicycle. Uh, that's those are the things the I would say mysterious things that Steve was able to teach me when I was training with him in Australia. He was able to tell how much leg length a rider has and how much shim he needs to address by just asking the rider's brain using kinesiotherapy.
Wow. Shoutout lang tayo kay Madam Claire Adorna, kay Kuya Martin daw.
Hi
Ang
Claire, miss you.
fresh na Claire Adorna. Hi Claire. Basta ka naman.
Meron pala akong Sir Martin, phone in
Ano
na question galing sa aking tatay. Kasi nag-bike din siya. Meron daw bang fit na or maling fit na nakaka-induce or nakaka-promote ng more accidents or semplang?
Yes po, it happens po a lot of time. Actually, there's a very big debate now in pro fitters na sometimes pro riders choose to be so forwarded on the saddle. Kaya nangyayari, when they're descending, minsan out of balance sila kasi wala nang traction sa likod ng bisikleta. They choose to be forwarded to be able to get more power in every pedal stroke, so to get to lower and more aerodynamic. But sometimes they're sacrificing the stability of the rear tire when they're descending so fast. Kaya minsan nakikita natin may mga pro rider na tumatalon pagdating sa mga sobrang cornering. We have some fitters na against that. We have some fitters na they're just telling, oh, the rider just have to work on their descending techniques and stuff like that. So iba't iba pa rin po yung belief ng bawat fitter. Pero yes, may mga ano po talaga, may mga position na sometimes delikado para sa mga riders po. Especially like what I said earlier, some fitters, what they do para lang ma-lessen yung pressure sa saddle, titilt down nila yung saddle. So, nawala nga yung pressure pero hindi niya alam yung weight nasa kamay na. Pag sobrang haba ng descent, like you're going down Baguio, hindi naman sa nakapull ng preno yung rider kasi nagna-numb na yung kamay niya. Cold weather with the numbness in the hands. Kaya minsan, hindi na sila nakakapreno. Minsan, it leads to accidents po.
Yun ang worst pag nagmanhid yung kamay mo tapos pababa. Bad trip yun. Ganun-ganun ka bago bumaba eh, diba? Hoping nakakagat.
Ganun na lang yung pwede mong gawin, Marso.
Hindi, pero ganyan kasi ako dati bago ako magpa-fit nung etong huli. Kasi nagmamanhid yung kamay ko bago pagpalusong nakakatakot. From JM Bueno, what's your take on XCMTB fitting? How do you balance between handling and efficiency? And is there a perfect balance?
Actually, XC fitting is more complicated than riding. I remember when I was studying bike fitting, I asked my professor if he could teach me to fit mountain biking. What he told me was, you ride mountain bikes for a year or two, you compete at a competitive level. If you're able to compete, then come back to me. Then I will teach you. Why? Because to be able to fit a mountain biker, you have to understand how a mountain biker will be moving on the trails. Because every time you're adjusting your body on the bike, the center of gravity of the rider adjusts on the bike also. So for you to be able to understand how to balance a rider when they're going downhill, when they're going uphill, when they're descending on the trails, jumping on the trails, kailangan may idea ka rin on how they are doing it. So that's why when I'm fitting mountain bikers, sometimes you see me putting big blocks just to be able to raise the front of the bike para I can see how the rider's fitting when they're pedaling with too much sobrang incline para makita ko rin yung balance nila sa bisikleta. And then sometimes I put the rear wheel so high and drop the front end para makita ko how they're going to balance, how they're going to move the center of gravity or transfer their weight if they're descending really fast on the trails. So fitting an XC bike is more complicated than fitting a road bike in terms of bike fitting.
Okay. Ito, Mabel de Mavivas. Meron bang asymmetric legs na magkaiba ang crank length?
That's something na still debatable, pero we do it sometimes. Pag sobrang laki na ng asymmetry. Pero you have to remember, when you're working on asymmetry, it's not just the bottom stroke and the upstroke na naapektuhan. Yes, pag nag-shorten ka ng isang arm, mababalance mo in terms of bottom stroke and upstroke, the movement. Pero you have to remember, it's a 360 movement of the foot. So affected din the whole pedaling stroke. So rather than changing the different crank arm lengths, it's better if it's a functional asymmetry, work on the muscles, balance the pelvic, the hip, or if it's a structural asymmetry, it's better to just put shims on the shoe. Opo, shims or supports on the shoe para mabalance mo yung structural asymmetry or imbalance ng rider. Kasi minsan, nagkakaroon po ng problema yan. Pag mahaba ang isang crank at maiksi ang isa, tumatabingi rin ang upo ng rider sa bisikleta. If you started sitting on one side of the saddle, it will lead more problems. It could lead to lower back pain, could lead to pressures on one side of the body, or it could even lead to pressures on the genitals kasi you're tilted on the bicycle itself kasi hindi pantay yung crank arm length.
Ayan, Mabel, mag-shim ka na lang. Pero hindi naman kasi siya, guys, you have to understand na hindi naman hindi black and white yung sagot sa lahat ng fitting problems nyo. Like, kunyari, yung sabi ni Mabel na asymmetric legs, obviously, isa lalagyan ng shim, yung isa hindi. Pero ako, in my case, parehong may shim.
Yes po.
Diba?
Yes.
So, hindi tayo pareho lahat ng pag sinabi, masakit yung leg ko pag ganito. It doesn't automatically mean na mataas yung alam mo yun, yung kaya kayo magpapa-bike fit para malaman nyo kung ano talaga yung problem. Bago nyo...
Kanya-kanya tayong problema.
Kanya-kanya tayong problema.
At the same time, that's why yung fitting po tumatagal na maraming hours kasi hinahanap talaga natin kung saan natin masasagot yung mga problema ng rider. Yes, I've seen a rider with a 27 centimeter spacer on the shoe.
Wow.
Yeah. Steve did it in Australia. Gusto namin galawin yung fit niya. Steve did it 20 years ago. Gusto namin i-align yung hip niya. Sabi sa amin ng rider, don't you ever touch my hip. You did this 20 years ago and it's working for me. And I've seen Steve did a 165 and 172.5 crank arm length. And it worked also for the rider. Kasi sobrang tabingi ang po ng rider sa bisikleta. So that's the beauty of bike fitting. Every rider throws you different problems and you get to work on those problems. And every time you're working with a rider, you learn from every rider. Yeah. So it's a continuous learning system po talaga. Never-ending learning system.
Ito, Carl Joshua Tossing. Mukhang gusto niya talaga malaman yung sagot. Thoughts on Aero frame with climbing wheels? Wala naman siyang kinalaman yata sa fit. Pero Aero frame with no.
Aero frame with climbing wheels. Then parang I'm sure si Sir Paco, they have experience. Pero sa akin, if you ask me, if you're using Aero frame with climbing wheels, it will work, pero nawawala yung advantage ng aeroframe.
Aeroframe,
I think kasi yung pag dinesign yung aero bike, yung aero road bike or aeroframe, naka-design yan na usually more than 60 mm na wheels. So depende sa brand. So specialized may Venge, yung Canyon may Aero. So depende siguro. Pero kung kunwari gusto mo lang talaga or wala kang choice dahil yung race mo ay may uphill or may matinding uphill, kailangan mo magpagaan, kailangan magaan yung bike mo, and yun lang yung bike mo talaga, naka-aero frame ka, edi walang problema yun. As in, kung nagtitraining ka or ano, yun nga lang, yung bike na yun talagang designed siya for aerodynamic efficiency. So, depende lang rin. Pero wala namang problema yan. Kung kung gusto mo ilagay, walang problema. Hindi naman, kung maganda yung airframe mo, hindi naman siguro siya papangit.
Pwede ka mag-SL7 para one bike to rule them all pa rin.
Ayan.
Pero na-climbing pa, di ba?
I'm gonna give you one, guys, an example po. When I was in Belgium, nasa wind tunnel kami. Do you remember yung twin blade ng wheelier na fork? Yung parang may butas? We've tested the wheels that would match it. There was one wheel na bumagal yung frame. It's a wheel na, ayoko lang sabihin yung brand, may dimples yung wheel. It doesn't match the fork. Yeah, so
minsan maglalapan yung ano niya, yung aero, yung flow ng air.
Yes, so minsan may mga frame designs talaga na they're match for the wheels. Like ako, when Specialized says that their frame is fast, I believe them kasi they have their own wind tunnel, and it's an advantage for them. They could practice, they could fiddle with many things, fiddle with different combinations. So it's not just marketing for them. It's really research. They're doing their research talaga. They're not paying a third-party company to do this for them. They have their own team working with them. So if ever they say, oh, this is 1% faster, they really do know that it's faster.
Yes. Pati siguro isang malaking advantage nila, lahat ng gamit na pwede mong gamitin sa pagbabike mo, proprietary sa Specialized lahat. Yes, so, bibili ka ng bike, tinest nila yung helmet, gamit yung bike na yun, tested nila yung shoes na yung bagong shoes na 1% faster, nakatest yung Roval na wheel set dun sa Venge or sa Tarmac SL7. So talagang pag naglabas sila ng data,
total.
Yes. Boss Richie, good evening, Boss Richie.
Tapos yung ano yan, diba? Yung S-Works na Aris, yung bagong shoes na 1% faster.
1% faster.
Ako, I'm very interested. I'm very,
Galing ko sa'yo next week.
Opo, yeah. Para makita ko.
Yes. Yan. Ano to? Ayan, Carl Manuel, 3 hours ang king of coffee ride, di ba? Mukhang matatalo ka tayo, Chuck! Yung mga tanong pa, ito na, hindi. Huwag naman natin puyatan si Boss Martin. So, Ariel, ito medyo, at least for another point of view. Any specific adjustment for people who are spending most of their time indoors? Madami kasi nagko-complain ng genital numbness sa indoor, pero no problem on outdoors.
That's a very good
no problem on outdoors, I guess.
Most of the time, when you're riding outdoor, you're dynamic. You're moving on and off the saddle. You're moving on but when you're riding indoors, you're more static. You're more sitting on the saddle. That's why I always tell my clients, it's okay to stand up every 10 minutes just to lessen the pressure in the private way. And another thing, when you're riding on the road, you have wind hitting you on the private area. So medyo nalalamigan, nahahanginan. So based on our findings, it's best thing to do is direct mo rin yung electric fan dun sa saddle area mo para may hangin na umiikot dun para na-lessen yung what do you call this? The moisture. At the same time, mas nare-relax yung legs mo. Pero one thing you could do, you could stand up on the saddle. That's why they're doing yung mga rocker boards na. Or they have the kinetic rock and roll. Kasi when you're moving with the bike, hindi static yung pedaling mo. Kasi if you're always static on the bike, like you're sitting 1 hour, 2 hours, it's not only pressure on the genitals that you will experience. It's also pressure on the lower back and the hip. Kasi hindi nagsisway yung bike together with you on the bike, when you're pedaling. So it's okay to start. Just don't sprint. Kasi most manufacturers, they don't like putting their bikes on trainers kasi it's dangerous for the stays. Just don't stand up and sprint on the bike. It's okay to stand up just to be able to relax and relieve the pressures that you feel on the genitals. Again, if you're feeling pressures on the genitals, it will be different outdoors kasi outdoors may hangin at the same time. nag-iiba yung position mo on the bike. Gumagalaw ko sa bisikleta.
Ayan. So guys, pag pressured na yung genitals nyo, alam mo yung gagawin nyo. Hindi, pero ano yan kasi diba nung pandemic, nung start, naka-Zwift tayo lahat kasi bawal talaga lumabas eh. Alam ng difference nung nag-outdoor na ulit. Like ako yung flexibility parang, kasi pag naka-indoor ka, hindi ka naman nakayuko the whole time. Minsan, aangat ka. Di ba? Parang hindi mo naman kailangan nakahawak sa handlebars or so may difference din siya eh. Parang
For me, indoor training is very good in power building. It's really helpful if you want to build power. But the only problem, if you keep on riding indoors, you lose the stability, you lose the handling skills, which is always still ride outdoors to improve your handling and stability skills on the bike po.
Ayan, last few before we wrap up. So Jeffrey Pineda, want to try deep section wheel set. Is there a big effect to be fast? Kung flat yung
Yes
kung
po.
flat or descent, pero pag uphill, yun yung payoff.
At the same time, it depends on the type of frame that you're using. If you have a rounded frame, it's not gonna help you that much like yung mga classic frames. But if you have an Aero frame, medyo may tulong din po siya. Pero you have to consider also, deep section wheels will affect your handling din, especially pag tinamaan ka ng mga crosswinds and sidewinds. It will be more unstable po.
Ito pala, Boss Joseph David, yung helmet ko pwede na ba i-claim sa Specialized? Yes, Sir Joseph. Yun na, panalunan yung helmet. Pwede mo na rin i-claim. Record mo na yun. Ito, sorry. Before we forget, Chris Rodriguez, where and how to reach you, Sir Martin?
We have a page po, it's Forward Motion Performance.
Okay.
You can send me a message there, or you can send me a private message via my Facebook. It's Frederick Martin A. Ilagan po. And then usually answer in the morning po.
Ayun. So if you have any inquiries, if you wanna make an get a booking or like an appointment, Frederick Martin A. Ilagan on Facebook or the Facebook page Forward Motion Performance. Yan. Kung gusto pabook na kayo ngayon. baka naman. Ayan, so I guess we can 10:30 na, sobrang overtime na tayo. So to wrap up, ano pa ako? May tanong ka pa ba? Ikaw yung last week pa nagtatanong eh.
Wala na. Okay na.
Hindi, ito na lang. Sorry. Kung may mga question pala kami na hindi nasagot, I guess feel free to message you. Tama ba, Boss Martin?
Pwede po, or if you guys need me anytime sa show, sabihan nyo lang po ako. I will always
Mag-repeat na lang tayo. Mag-repeat na lang tayo para...
Yes,
so ngayon,
I love doing this because it's not just I'm being able to help, pati po ako natututo. Umaandar din po yung utak ko. I love making sure na yung utak ko laging umaandar po. Nare-relax ako pag may mga ganito. Kasi minsan pagkaharap mo araw-araw bisikleta na, medyo...
pag tinausap ka na ng bisikleta, ba na?
Opo.
Ayun, so, again, guys, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for all your questions. Ayan, part 2. Sabi nga ni Joseph nasagot na daw ang nasan yung comment ni Joseph? Pa ako magsalita ako, hanapin ko yung message ni Joseph kasi maganda eh.
Hindi, I think isa to sa hindi naman controversial, pero isa sa pinakamalalim na pwede nating pag-usapan tungkol sa bisikleta, yung fit. Kasi sobrang infinite ng possibilities sa pag-uusapan. Lalo, siguro sa ating tatlo lang, nakausap natin si Sir Martin ngayon, parang ang dami na nating mga problemang pwedeng ilapit sa kanya. And lalo na siguro yung mga nanonood na nagtatanong, nag-iisip na ano na yung kakalikutin nila mamaya sa bike nila, ano i-adjust nila. Lalo yung mga naka-experience na ng pangit na fit or nagkamali sila ng lagay ng kung ano man, di ba?
Opo, siguro one time, if we can reset, I'd love to do it in the sa fitting studio para I can ask one of my friends na ride on the bike para it's easier for me to explain like saddle height, pressure saddle, or
You should do
hand
that.
pressure. Mas mapapakita ko po on what's happening.
Yan. Mas
Yun.
practical na.
Or ano na, sige mamaya, usap tayo pagkataas, may naisip lang ako. Ano to? Hindi, pero guys, more than, getting yourself fitted, once you've experienced riding na wala nang galawan lahat, pag umupo ka, kasado ka na sa bike mo, pag pumadyak ka, tuloy-tuloy lang siya, hindi mo na iniisip, wala kang nararamdaman na ano. Iba yung feeling na ganun yung ride mo na wala, 'di ba? Parang you can enjoy your ride, you're not iba, hindi ko ma-explain na pero iba yung feeling, ang sarap mag-ride kahit maghapon, walang problema. Ito sabi ni Joseph, nahanap ko na. I think this topic answers the most controversial question in cycling. Wala sa bike yan, wala sa tuhod yan, nasa bike fit yan.
Nasa
Yan.
rider po.
Pero Joseph, sa'yo, nasa asawa yan. Pag hindi ka pinayagan mag-ride, kahit gaano kalakas ang tuhod mo or gaano kaganda bike mo, pag hindi ka pinayagan ng asawa mo, hindi ka talaga pwede. Ayun. So,
Yung mga pahabol pa.
Ayan, yung mga pahabol, paano ba to? Basta, Sir Martin, mayroon ba kayong final message to our viewers before we wrap up?
Sa akin lang, like I always tell everyone, cycling should be fun. When you're riding your bike, it should feel like you're free. It feels like your freedom. Cycling shouldn't be painful. If you feel painful, it means there's something wrong with your position. The reason we're riding bikes is because we want to enjoy it. So let's keep it that way. Let's make sure we're all happy, fun on the road. Okay? So sa akin, I know not everyone can avail my services, pero I'm always here willing to help. Well, if you need my help, just ask Sir Paco, Sir Mars. I'm willing to do shows again. The more people I can help, the more people I see riding on the road, the happier we are. We're all riders. When we're out on the road, pantay-pantay po lang tayo. So, yun yung gusto ko mangyari. Mas maraming makita ang nagbabike sa kalsada, mas gumanda yung industry natin, and it will be better for everyone riding bicycles.
Yun.
Say, Boss Paco, kay Sir Mars, thank you for having me here. Really appreciate it po. Medyo bored na rin ako dito sa probinsya.
Buti na lang pala.
Buti na lang, bored.
Sige. Gusto ko kasi bored na talaga ako. Opo. So,
pero thank you. This is, we've learned, I'm sure everyone watching learned a lot from today's show na, di ba? And informative Tsaka, you learn more about your bike, you learn more about yourself, you find out why something is, di ba, parang something may discomfort, may So all you want is, I guess, to make your riding experience better, di ba? Shouldn't be a chore or it shouldn't feel like it's work. So yun. So thank you for sharing all that with us. And hopefully, let's do another one. Let's do another show for the further questions.
Ay, sir, don't be afraid to fiddle with your bikes.
Yes.
It's okay to fiddle with your bike. Just make sure that if you're going to adjust something, give your body enough time to adapt on the adjustments that you made. Give it a week. Hindi pwedeng in-adjust mo ngayon, after a few kilometers, i-adjust mo ulit. Hindi mo pa ma-feel yung adjustment na ginawa mo. I prefer working with people fiddling with their bikes kasi mas madali yung nagiging fitting namin kasi almost optimal na yung position nila sa bisikleta.
Nice. Ayan. Basta markahan nyo lang kung ano yung pinanggalingan nung i-adjust nyo. Baka mamaya wala. Ayan.
Always measure the adjustments that you did. You can use masking tape or you can use a correction fluid para may marker po kayo.
Ayun. Paco?
Of course, syempre, isang malaking thank you kay Sir Martin. Alam ko isang very special na hindi lang episode pati na rin yung topic natin ngayon. Sobrang I'm sure maraming matutulungan yan kahit hindi kayo mag-avail ng services ni Sir Martin. I'm sure ang dami niyang nasabi ngayon na mapupulot nyo na pwede nyong i-apply sa bike nyo instantly. As in, ngayon, pwede nyo nang, yung sinasabi nga niya, pwede nyo nang kalikutin ngayon, di ba? Subukan nyo na, tingnan nyo kung yung mga guidelines na binigay niya, kahit rough sketch lang ng kung ano yung tamang bike fit, di ba? And hopefully, sana nainganyo kayo na at least mag-entertain ng idea na kailangan nyo magpa-bike fit dun sa mga hindi pa nakakapag-bike fit. And yun nga, yung isang idea dyan, hindi lahat ng masakit, hindi lahat ng nakakapagod ay nakakalakas. Minsan, yung masakit ay masakit lang, yung nakakapagod ay nakakapagod lang, di ba? Ang gusto mo, kapag nagbabike ka, kapag nag-iensayo ka, yung sakit na nararamdaman mo, dun lang sa workout. Hindi dahil pangit yung fit mo or hindi maganda yung saddle, hindi maayos yung position mo sa bike. So, as much as possible, gusto mo yung fit mo perfect para yung performance mo perfect din, di ba? Yung suffering na nararamdaman mo sa bike, doon lang sa hirap nung pagpa-jack, hindi lang yung hirap nung i-maintain nung position, ang hirap lang nung pagsakay mo. So, yun, hindi lahat ng nakakapagod ay nakakalakas, di ba? So, again, thank you kay Sir Martin. Isang malaking privilege to sa ating show na impart yung ganitong klaseng information na nakakita tayo ng tulad ni Sir Martin na generous sa information na pwede niyang ibigay. So, ayun lang. Thank you so much.
Sir Pac, before I forget po pala, yung may mga questions po sa fitting, I have a YouTube channel. You don't have to subscribe. You don't have to like. Hindi ko po yung ginawa para i-subscribe nyo. Kung ginawa ko po yun para hindi po ako paulit-ulit pag tinatanong.
Yan pala.
Meron na po akong, pag may nagtanong, tingnan mo na lang po doon para mas maintindihan nyo. Every week, I try to give upload new topics. Again, makakatulong po yun. You don't have to subscribe. You don't have to like it. Ang gusto ko lang po, makatulong po sa inyo.
Yes. Yeah. So, ano yung YouTube channel?
It's Forward Motion Performance po.
Okay, Forward Motion Performance on YouTube. Tapos, I guess, we've never said this. We don't usually say this, but I guess you can share this episode to your friends who are cyclists also. Kasi they can always go back to everything that we talked about. Baka something applies to them. Diba? Parang information, passing on of information lang naman siya. So, just share it to your friends who might have some, discomforts or experiencing mga discomforts on their bike. So, share nyo na lang. So there, thank you guys. Thank you for watching.
Maraming salamat po sa inyo.
May mga gusto kayong pasalamatan, Boss Martin, mga partners nyo?
Yung mga shop partners po natin. We have Specialized Philippines. We have Colnago Manila. We have Multi-Sport Hub. We have Corsa Cycles, De Rosa. We have RMG Bike Shop in Tanawan. We have Beer Cycles in Lipa. Baka may we have Epic Cycles in Alabang. So, pero most of all, thank you very much po kay Boss Paco at saka kay Sir Mars. Anytime that you need me po, sabihin nyo lang po ako. I'm always open to be here for you guys po.
Yan, thank you. Ikaw pa ako, may gusto pa salamatan.
Ito, gusto ko lang banggitin to si Chuck Kasi sabi niya, bakit daw ang haba ng thank you ko kay Sir Martin sa kanya. Gusto ko na mag-gym. Kasi Chuck, pinagod po kami, Chuck May kakaiba kang budol powers So, wala, ayun. Siyempre, thank you ulit kay Sir Martin and thank you sa mga nanonood. Hopefully, marami tayong na-impart na information galing kay Sir Martin and sa mga experiences natin bilang mga siklista. Ayun lang. Siyempre, tulungan lang. Sabi nga ni Sir Martin, gusto lang natin magtulungan para marami tayong makitang nagbabike ng maayos. Hindi natin gusto makakita nung nagbabike na parang nahihirapan o pinaparusahan, di ba? So, ayun lang.
Ayan. So guys, thank you, Sir Martin, Paco.
Salamat po.
I'd like to thank Specialized Philippines, Specialized Asia Hub, Nike Philippines, Rudy Project, Endurance Lab. So thank you guys. We'll see you again next week.
Bye.